He was an S-rank adventurer, but he just had bad luck with his class, and everything went wrong. Guilt, despair, death. But his greatest enemy gave him another try. Even though he knows the future, he will have to become a monster himself and conquer the abyss. From now on, his path is not just survival, but a war for an ideal future. Will he be able to fix everything? Let's find out. 20 years ago, an event changed the world. That day went down in history as the beginning of a new era of dungeons. The main character, Kiyomi Aki, looked at the portrait of his sister in the locket and told her that he had finally reached S-rank. After apologizing to her, he headed to the portal and passed through it, finding himself in another world. Touching his bracelet, he looked at the system window with information about himself. He is 38 years old, level 50, and the assassin class. But even such characteristics did not please him at all, and he wondered if it was worth it. The team members who were already waiting for his entrance finally entered inside with him. After some time of walking through the dungeon, they came across a huge monster, a B-rank shadow wolf. The team leader asked him to do them a favor, and he agreed without much enthusiasm, after which he jumped up and headed towards the monster's paw, with which it intended to kill him. A second later, the wolf hit the ground with his paw, but seeing that there was no corpse, started looking for the guy. Aki meanwhile hid behind a rock and thought that even ordinary monsters have extremely huge strength. He decided to take advantage of this and, coming out of his hiding place, jumped on the wolf and plunged a dagger into its body. This only angered the monster. It turns out it could control its fur and cut Aki with it, which is why he was thrown right to the edge of the platform. The wolf growled loudly, already intending to devour him, but suddenly the team leader cut off its head with just a swing of his sword. After that, he mockingly asked, he couldn't even cope with this wolf. Did he buy his rank from some scammer, or is it age that makes itself felt? The rest of the team laughed at him, and he looked at them in shock, and the girl said that he did well for an assassin. They all laughed together, and he, starting to wipe his wound, said in his mind that he already knew that he was weak. When using the class, it turned out that the assassin was not designed for combat. Despite the enormous strength indicators, his rank was the only thing he could boast about, and all this was for the sake of seeing a smile on his sister's face again. He simply had to find medicine for her, and only for this, he continued to be an adventurer. However, the disease progressed quickly and, in the end, cut short her life. But he was still unable to give up his usual way of life. It completely exhausted him. He reached his limits. And to top it off, it turned out that the assassin is the weakest class for clearing dungeons. Time passed. The adventurers successfully enrolled several rooms, and their leader, sitting on the corpse, said that it was enough for today. They would return again tomorrow. And now they needed to discuss the reward. The girl healed him in an instant while Aki was gritting his teeth and holding his wounds. And then the team leader asked if he would mind being left without a reward. He agreed to this, and the guy happily exclaimed that this was great. It was enough that they were taking him into the party at all. Aki did not react at all. He had already gotten used to this kind of treatment. And despite this, he continues to be an adventurer, because dungeons are fraught with hidden opportunities. The rest was over, and they headed for the exit. Poor wounded Aki barely got to his feet, and then suddenly there was a roar from above, and the ceiling began to crumble. A huge monster came out from behind the column and blocked the adventurer's path. Aki opened his mouth wide in shock from its size. In front of them stood the mechanical dragon Kurulkan of the S-rank. The adventurers were not afraid of it at all. Only Aki understood that something was wrong here. This boss was different from the previous ones. The team leader swung his sword and rushed into battle with the others. But at the first encounter, they lost all their strength and realized how strong this monster was. They realized that they needed to run, and Aki thought that running was a smart move. The strength of this monster was simply enormous. While he was looking at the monster, someone pushed him right towards him, and he fell to the floor. He immediately turned around, and the team leader apologized to him with a grin, after which the dragon approached Aki, and its mouth snapped shut on him. The adventurers took advantage of this and ran away. In fact, the team leader wanted to get rid of him after this mission. Besides, he was useless. Meanwhile, only parts of Aki were left, but they turned out to be fake. It was just a stone. The real him was hiding behind a column at that time. Fortunately, he managed to escape, leaving his double. Just a little more, and he would have died. He can't believe that they abandoned him. Since he understood that he definitely couldn't cope alone, he decided to run away. But suddenly the dragon spoke. They would pass through the gate. Their end would be inevitable. Aki was very surprised, and then Kurulkan's paw was next to him, after which he himself appeared and said that the time had come. The gate had opened, and humanity did not have long left. Aki exclaimed that monsters could not cross the gate, to which Kurulkan answered him that he could. Aki looked at him in horror and thought that if monsters like him broke through the gate, then everything would end. So he could not allow this. He decided to stand in his way. Even if he had to die, he would hold him back. The dragon spread his paws to the sides and, gathering strength, shouted, "Is he ready to die for those who abandoned him?" He spat slime at him, but he avoided the attack and ended up behind him. Sensing this, the dragon turned around and hit him with its paw, but it was a double again. Aki himself was already high above him at this time. He landed on him and was about to strike him, but suddenly his blade broke on his armor, and he realized that it would not be easy to fight him. He noticed the dragon's paw quickly approaching him and wanted to dodge, but his bad leg failed him, and he ended up getting hit, from which he was thrown several meters and he hit the wall. Trying to recover from this, he told himself to pull himself together. He must have a weak spot. He created several clones, and the dragon aimed at one of them, then released a beam of light from its mouth, which passed right next to the shoulder of the real Aki. As soon as the beam hit the wall behind, an explosion occurred, and Aki realized that it knew where he was. Suddenly, he was blinded by a bright flash. He noticed a magic symbol on the monster's neck, its weak spot, and rushed to attack along with his clones, but Kurulkan exclaimed that it was pointless. He shouted back that it was not up to him to decide, after which the dragon swung its paw, wounding him. But despite this, he continued to firmly move towards his goal. Since his blade was broken, he activated the Phantom Blade. Meanwhile, the dragon got rid of one of his clones, and by that time he was already very close and struck at the weak spot. After that, an explosion was heard, smoke poured out of the dragon's mouth, and he himself was surprised that a person managed to pull off such a thing. But this attack was hard for Aki. He bet everything on winning. He smirked at this thought, but his strength was already at its limit. This was not bad for the weakest class. At least before death he looked cool. Meanwhile, the dragon was very happy. He called the man's attack magnificent, and admitted that he was a strong opponent. Creating a sign in the air, which was on his neck, he told Aki that the time had come, they would see each other soon. On this sign, the hands of a clock appeared, which began to spin. Meanwhile, Aki wondered if he managed to help the world at least a little. Suddenly, a system appeared. It informed him that for solo killing the mechanical dragon Kurulkan, he received a reward. He vaguely saw a system window in front of him and wondered what it was and whose voice was that. The system reported that there were no quests at the moment, and he, without even trying to make out what was written there, closed his eyes and thought that it did not matter now. It was time to die. But when he fell asleep, a loud ringing was heard. He jumped out of bed and turned off the alarm clock, staring into space in shock. Not believing what was happening, he jumped out of bed and ran to the bathroom. Only when he saw his reflection in the mirror did he realize that he was alive, and he was also young. He felt his face and thought, was this the work of that dragon? So that screen wasn't his hallucination before he died? Returning to the room, he found that he had received a message on his phone. His sister Natsu asked him to bring her a chocolate bar. Seeing this, he realized that she was also alive and cried with joy. He immediately pulled himself together and brushed away his tears, saying that the most important thing is that she is alive. Now, he no longer has the right to make a mistake. This time, he will not let her die. The first thing he did, of course, was go to the hospital. Sharply throwing open the doors, he scared his sister and called out loudly to her, after which he hugged her tightly by the head and with tears in his eyes, said that she was really here. She smiled confusedly and asked where else she could be. After such a tearful connection, he decided to watch the news, where they talked about her illness. The number of patients continues to grow. The main method of treatment has not yet been found, but research institutes are developing new antibodies and preparing for their mass production. But Aki already knew that these antibodies will not help. The cure can only be found in the future, in high-level dungeons, so he needs to reach a high rank as soon as possible. Deciding not to waste time, he went to apply to the guild. While he was walking down the street, a system window popped up in front of him and informed him that new quests were available. 10 kilometers of running on a slope, 20 pull-ups, and 30 loud greetings. He looked at it in surprise and remembered that this was the same screen that appeared before his death. It gave him a reward for defeating the dragon. Deciding to test it, he smiled, after which he found his first victim and loudly greeted him. The poor old man looked at him with fear, as did his dog. Not waiting for an answer, Aki quickly stepped aside under the loud barking of an angry little dog and thought that this was so awkward. Why did he need to greet someone loudly? But thanks to the old man and his dog, he had already done 2 greetings and began to complete other quests. He easily ran 10 kilometers down the slope, did 20 pull-ups, and greeted passersby loudly 30 times. Finally, the task was completed and the system gave him a reward, an experience bonus. His level increased to 3. The next task will be available to him tomorrow. He was very surprised that he was able to rise to level 3 so easily. Usually it takes a whole month to raise at least 1 level. He was very happy that he received power that his past self could not even dream of, and stretched out his arms to the sides, already imagining how he would become a great adventurer, and a sweet old lady put a candy in his palm, which he recently greeted. After that, he went to the guild and registered as an adventurer, and there, the administrator gave him a bracelet to check if he was suitable for this role. As soon as he put on the bracelet, an information window appeared in front of him, which said that he was now 18 years old, the recruit class, level 3, rank F. so he made sure that the level really went up, after which the girl said that the bracelet on his hand allows him to choose a class. So let him be careful. He thanked her and thought that his skills would depend on the chosen class. Then he confidently declared that he would choose the classless class, which made the other adventurers laugh and ask, does he want to clear dungeons from the couch? But they laughed in vain. Later they would find out that this is the most versatile class. The guild worker smiled awkwardly and asked, is he sure about his choice? Maybe he will think about it some more? But he no longer paid attention to her and looked at something in the system window, after which he went to the store in order to buy a weapon. He was interested in a sword called Demon Bite. At level 3 it is quite light, and he does not have the sword skill yet. In the end, he bought this sword. It is, of course, a bit expensive, but in the future, it will pay for itself. Since the organizational part was finished, it was time to go to the dungeon. The two novice adventurers looked at the portal in front of them, and still did not dare to enter. But when they saw that Aki entered it without a doubt, they decided that he was generally fearless. After passing through the portal, he felt nostalgic. He hadn't been here for a long time. Immediately bumping into monsters, he took out his sword and cut several slimes. He managed to kill them very easily. It even surprised him. Because of the difference in levels, he bursts them like bubbles. After that, he found another opponent, a skeleton swordsman. He easily chopped his bones and thought that in the past, it would have taken him much longer. Wiping the sweat from his face, he thought that it was so cool, after which he began to collect magic stones. In fact, they are batteries that store energy. In their world, they are worth a lot. They are the ones who go into dungeons. Suddenly, a menacing roar was heard behind him. A rare E-rank monster named Oros appeared. Aki immediately rushed to attack and thought that he was an infrequent guest of the dungeon, but strong enough. Swinging his sword, he struck, but the skeleton blocked it with a shield. His hand trembled under the onslaught of his sword, but then he suddenly raised his shield, causing Aki's weapon to fly. After that, Oros used a sweeping strike, and immediately after that he used the blade dance skill, but Aki blocked each of his attacks. While he was doing this, he was completely calm, and thought that this was the true strength of a classless. This is the same hidden power that will only be discovered after 15 years. A classless has a 10 times higher skill increase speed compared to other classes. While he was fighting Oros, he mastered his skills, sweeping strike and blade dance. A high level of skill allows him to master the enemy's technique, so luck is on his side in this life. Leaving the monster without a weapon, he dealt a fatal blow, breaking its bones, after which a D-rank magic stone appeared on the ground. After that, he returned to the guild and the administrator noted that he returned quite early. He agreed with her and said that it was a surprise for him too. And then she asked if he had a hard time because he didn't have a class. He told her that it wasn't like that at all, and then he put a bag full of magic stones on the table, saying that it was easy. Suddenly, one of the adventurers grabbed his shoulder and exclaimed, "How could a newbie like him clear the dungeon alone?" He was clearly not telling the whole story. The man grabbed him by his clothes, but he couldn't stand being treated like that and taught him a lesson, almost dislocating his arm. After that, the man returned to his friend without further ado, and he asked if he really was classless. By this time, the girl had already calculated the cost of the magic stones and credited his account with the reward, which was 101,000 yen. Suddenly, a system window appeared in front of his eyes, informing him that an emergency quest was available, which made him very excited. It turns out the emergency task was to sing in the square for 5 minutes, which really angered him, but there was nowhere to go. He went out to the square and started singing loudly, which attracted the attention of passers-by. Some started filming him, and some laughed. There were more on the latter. He was red as a tomato from shame, but he continued to sing, because he would do anything to become stronger and save his sister. When he finished the song, some old man threw him a coin, and others applauded. After thanking the audience, he checked the system window. The task was completed, and he was given a reward. A ring with a magic identification stone appeared in his palm. This is a very useful thing. Having decided to check his characteristics, he thought that the skill level shows compatibility with a given artifact. The higher the level, the greater the potential of the item used. Now his two-handed sword mastery level was at level 8, and all stats were between 70 and 120. He was very happy about this. It was not for nothing that he chose this class. If he had not chosen the classless class, he would have hardly raised the first level. After that, he went to the starting dungeon, fought there with slimes, using his new skills, and then switched to skeletons. With his new techniques, things went much faster, and soon he was finished. In the end, he defeated several jumping slimes of F rank and skeleton swordsmen of the same level. Deciding that he had enough for today, he looked at his status window. Now his mastery level was 10, and all stats increased by about 2 points. The system reminded him that he had 4 undistributed stat points left, and he decided to spend them all on luck because it directly affects mastery, and a high mastery level will allow him to learn other people's skills. After collecting the magic stones, he decided to go home, but first he needed to go to the guild. Meanwhile, some guy was pestering the administrator and asking her if there was anyone strong here, and she was confused. And as soon as she saw Aki, she immediately pointed her finger at him and exclaimed that he was quite strong. The guy thanked her and, putting his hand on Aki's shoulder, said that they were currently recruiting talented adventurers. He asked if he wanted him to join. The guy confirmed this, and then his gaze was drawn to the backpack on his back, and when he found out that it was filled to the brim with magic stones, he was pleasantly surprised. MC immediately warned him that he was a newbie, but he didn't care about it. The main thing was his potential. They are from the Blood Serpent clan, and one day they will become so strong that they will pass the Abyss. The Abyss is an S-rank dungeon. It is the very first and most dangerous dungeon that opened in this world. No one has ever been able to pass it, neither now nor in the future. The guy asked, so what does he think about it? Should he join them? The MC thanked him for the offer and declined, and then the guy hugged him, asking him not to refuse. By the way, what is his class? When he told him that he is classless, the guy laughed and exclaimed that he is indecisive even in choosing a class. After patting him on the back, he said goodbye to him, after which he walked away and said that they do not need classless. After that, the receptionist apologized to Aki. She did not want to inconvenience him, but he did not care and gave her a backpack for her to count everything. She was very surprised by such a number of magic stones and asked, "Is he really classless?" He told her that it was just a class, and at that very moment, a girl appeared in the guild, who riveted all eyes on her. She walked up to the front desk and greeted them, and the MC thought she was cutting in line and asked her to wait, but in fact, she walked up to him. He looked at her with a straight face and thought she was pretty, and the girl said that she accidentally overheard them. He actually cleared the dungeons as a classless. He confirmed it and asked why everyone was so worried about it. She told him that everyone was just curious. So why did he decide to become classless? Does this class really have any advantages? He vaguely told her that it was possible, which made her chuckle. She liked him and decided to get to know him. She is Alice Takagi from the Carnelian Rage clan, and as unbelievable as it may sound, she is an S-rank adventurer. He asked why such an important person would need a classless like him. She told him that she needed him. They also want to clear the Abyss, and a talent like him would be very useful to them. His face darkened and he asked, "Is this despite the fact that he is classless?" She smiled and extended her hand to him and said that no one cares about class. The main thing is that he is strong. He looked at her suspiciously. He should not reveal the secret of mastery to just anyone yet. What should he do? He shook her hand and agreed, saying that their clan would be useful in achieving his goal. But suddenly, she pulled her hand back and said that there was a catch. They couldn't accept an F-rank adventurer, so she would soon send him an invitation to the D-rank dungeon, Icy Darkness. She used the right given to S-rank adventurers to send an invitation to anyone so that they could participate in a dungeon of a higher rank. The receptionist called Aki over and asked him to accept the payment for the stones, after which he took out his phone, and Alice looked at the screen and exclaimed in surprise, 90,000 for the starting dungeon? He told her not to peek, then headed for the exit, and she ran after him, hinting that he should treat her, but he was unmoved. Soon, he received an invitation and went to the dungeon, Icy Darkness. As soon as he passed through the portal, cold streams of wind and snow hit him in the face. Because of the blizzard, he walked forward blindly, and through the howling wind, he heard the crunch of snow next to him. A dark silhouette appeared in front of his eyes, which suddenly grew in size. The monster aiming at him, a polar bear, stood on its paws and screamed menacingly. MC immediately took out his sword and thought that he did not expect to see it so early, after which the system offered him a task. He needed to hold his breath for 60 seconds. He gritted his teeth in irritation. He was already tired of these idiotic tasks, but now was not the time. A huge paw of the monster was already hanging over him. Jumping aside, he dodged the blow and noted that at level 4, this was much easier for him. Immediately after that, he struck with his sword with all his might, but not as strong as he would have liked. This bear has thick skin, so he cannot delay the fight. He had no choice but to accept the quest. After which he held his breath. 49 seconds had already passed. He held his sword in front of him, and at the moment when the bear pounced on him with a roar, he blocked the blow and thought that he had only been in the fight for 60 seconds. But it felt like an eternity had passed. Finally, the quest was completed and he immediately took a deep breath. He was given a reward and his level increased to 5. After which he felt a surge of strength and, using the blade dance skill, chopped off the monster's paw, after which he delivered a sweeping blow that instantly ended it. The monster's head fell behind his back, after which the system reported that he had mastered a new skill, protection from the ice storm. This skill gives resistance to cold. With this, it will be much easier for him to move around the dungeon. After that, he thought, the quest is, of course, terrible, but he has a suspicion that all this is not without reason. However, this is not the main problem now. While he was thinking, he managed to get covered in snow, but soon he went hunting. Noticing a hare-like monster nearby, an E-rank frosthopper, he immediately chased after it, after which he took aim and struck it with his sword with all his might, and the nimble hare quickly galloped away. Looking displeased at the long-eared animal that laughed at his attempts to catch up with it, he decided not to touch it for now, after which he found a place to rest. Looking at the collected stones, he took out a thermos with a hot drink and thought that he was doing well in the dungeon, and all thanks to Alice. Here, he can accumulate good experience points. The image of Alice appeared before his eyes, and he, shaking his head from side to side, drove such thoughts into hell. Now the most important thing is to save his sister. He decided that today he needed to go as deep as possible, but suddenly he heard a loud human scream. One of the adventurers was pinned to an ice wall, while his comrade lay nearby in a pool of his own blood. A girl from their team named Naomi froze in horror in front of the huge monster, and when she saw that it was about to hit her, she closed her eyes. Aki saved her just before the impact. He caught her and jumped to the side, and the monster, a large version of those rabbits, followed him with its gaze. He was happy with his successful dodge, after which he took a handkerchief from his pocket, spread it on the snow and sat Naomi on it, saying that he would help her. She immediately melted from his actions. The adventurers were happy that the stranger had come and already thought that they were saved. But their opinion quickly changed when they found out that he was classless. Their faces darkened and they thought that they were going to die, and MC said that they were lucky that he was nearby. After that, he grabbed his sword and headed towards the hare, who immediately rushed towards him and raised his paws above his head. After that, it struck a blow that split the ground, and Aki jumped to the side, but several shards of ice flew straight at him. The hare did not miss the moment and quickly approached him. Then it opened its mouth wide, and it grew huge fangs. When it intended to grab him, he jumped to the side and increased the distance between them, with the thought that rare monsters are just crazy. Suddenly, the boss monster roared, after which it jumped high and MC cursed loudly. Good thing he put a few points into attack power then. Using a combined blow, slash, he attacked the monster and a blade flashed before its eyes, after which blood gushed. Looking at the flying pieces of meat, the girl was delighted, and one of her comrades asked, "He is classless. Where did he get the skill of wielding a sword?" Aki remained silent. This was starting to irritate him, but he didn't show it. Approaching the girl, he asked if everything was okay and asked her to get up, which made her even more embarrassed. She became very worried and thought, why was he helping her? In the meantime, he asked, she was a healer, right? Her comrades were injured, so let her heal them first. She reluctantly agreed to this, and while he sat and looked at the loot he had received, she began to heal. And one of her comrades said that he didn't expect that he would have to rely on a classless and a healer. Because of his words, MC remembered that healers weren't particularly appreciated at that time either. The guy got angry and ordered Naomi to be faster, because his whole body ached, which scared her, and she asked him for forgiveness. The other guy pulled up his sleeve and showed her his bloody hand, saying that because of her, they almost died, so she should hurry up. She started her treatment again, and Aki pointed out that they didn't see how strong she was. Suddenly the guy exclaimed, "Can she go faster? If she doesn't hurry up, she'll be soloing this dungeon." She started crying, and suddenly the MC came up to them, telling them to kick her out. This only made her more upset, but when he said that she was clearly not appreciated here and invited her to join him, she looked at him with delight and burst into tears, after which she embarrassedly exclaimed, "Is this a marriage proposal?" He told her that she was absolutely wrong, then said that she had great potential, and with his help, she would reveal it. He extended his hand to her and asked with a smile, "She believes him, right?" Looking at him, she realized that there was something in him that others didn't have, after which she took his hand and confidently declared that she believed him. He promised her that he would not let her down, after which he briefly said goodbye to her and left, leaving her confused. From the dungeon, he immediately went to the guild, and the administrator, seeing the magic stones, asked in surprise, did he really bring this from the icy darkness? Taking them, she said that he would definitely be promoted to E rank, and he thought that in this case, he would be able to enter the D rank dungeon even without an invitation. The magic stones were transferred. The girl turned to him and noted that this was the first time that a classless had raised his rank. An E rank can try his hand at a D rank dungeon. From this moment on, he is no longer a rookie. Seeing the money in his account again, he thought that he was going at a good pace, after which he decided to buy a gift for his sister. Time passed. After buying a box of cupcakes, he knocked on the door of the hospital room and called out to his sister, and a nurse passing by him was surprised by so many sweets. Since Natsu did not answer him, he went into the hospital room and found her sleeping. He smiled, thinking that she was so cute, then stroked her head and sat on a chair next to her, mentally telling her that this time he would make it. He would not let her die. All the pieces of the puzzle were coming together. His meeting with that girl was not an accident. Her power would come in handy in treating his sister. He decided to put the cupcakes in the refrigerator for now, but since they did not fit, he ate a few, and a nurse passing by was surprised and thought, "Is he eating all these sweets himself?" Soon evening came. He went outside and called Alice, who was just waiting for this. He told her that he had completed her task, and she asked with a smile, so he was able to pass the icy darkness being classless? He confirmed it and thanked her for the opportunity. With her help, he was able to achieve more. She said that she knew that her intuition was not deceiving her. After which she asked if he wanted to receive an invitation again. He answered her that this was not entirely true. There was a person who needed help with leveling up, and she, as it seemed to him, had wide connections. This girl was an extremely promising healer, and he wanted her to get into a group with a necromancer. Alice sighed and noted with a grin that he clearly had something in mind, and he asked if he had managed to intrigue her. He thought that the synergy between the healer and the necromancer would help her develop faster, but this was still unknown at this time. Alice agreed to his request, but he would owe her. Because of this, he was already thinking of giving up this business, but since he promised to help the healer, he had to agree. The girl laughed and promised him that she would do everything. After which the call ended, and she looked at the phone with the thought that it was quite mysterious. A new day dawned. The administrator solemnly congratulated Aki on his promotion to E rank. After receiving his reward, he thanked her and was about to leave, but seeing how coldly he reacted to this, she exclaimed that reaching E rank is also an achievement. Not every adventurer can do this. Suddenly, some movement began on the left. People stared in surprise at the imprisoned D rank adventurers who were led past. Criminal adventurers are called revenants. They always inspire fear in others. The administrator sighed heavily and said that few people would agree to accompany revenants. After which she returned to her work and muttered with annoyance that they were nothing but a hassle. Unexpectedly for her, Aki volunteered to accompany them. She immediately warned him that it was very dangerous, but he was confident that he could handle it. Besides, this job pays well. He knows how to deal with revenants. Do not follow their lead. Maintain authority. Do not keep up a conversation. The girl looked at him worriedly and accepted his help, saying that he would help her out a lot, after which she gave him a form to fill out. After that, they all went outside and the criminals were given collars, and the policeman gave Aki a special bracelet and explained to him how to use it. He only needed to press a button to calm them down. After putting it on, he thought that even criminals, if they were talented, were allowed to go on dungeon raids. The policeman advised him to thoroughly fry them with electricity if he noticed anything suspicious, and one of the criminals heard this and exclaimed indignantly that they actually had feelings too. The policeman standing next to him ordered him to shut his mouth, after which they approached the MC, and one of them asked what his name was, that he should feel free to introduce himself to them. Aki said his name and asked them not to talk to him anymore, after which their shackles were removed and they headed towards the portal. The revenants had already set their sights on their new caretaker and were up to something evil. They entered a D-rank dungeon, the depths of Inferno. One of the revenants wiped his sweat and said that it was very hot here. The government had completely gone crazy. His comrade ordered him to stop whining, after which he smirked and said that they had given them an opportunity after all. They froze and slowly turned to MC with evil grins, and he immediately pressed the bracelet, but it did not work. Looking at one of the criminals, he called him an idiot and asked if this was his doing. They quickly got rid of the bracelets on their necks and prepared for battle, saying that he would have to die. Aki immediately pulled out his sword, and the system reported the activation of an emergency quest. He needed to kill the enemies who attacked him. Quest was bloodthirsty and, as always, appeared on time. Before the fight could even begin, a huge fire snake, a D-rank monster, appeared from the fiery lake nearby. It let out a terrible roar and attacked them. MC successfully dodged the blow and turned his gaze to the criminal, whom this snake was just heading for, and to his surprise, he knocked this worm down with one fist and told it not to interfere with adults deciding the fate of a loser. MC immediately realized that he had a fighter class and grinned with the thought that this would be easier than he thought. He prepared for the fight, and one of the men clenched his hand into a fist and pounced on him. He missed and hit a stone, which from this split into pieces. Aki was surprised by this. While he was busy fighting this man, his comrades dug up a suitcase, which contained all the equipment they needed for escape and battles. Armed, they decided to attack him altogether, and MC thought that there is one fact. According to the evaluation ring, the fighter class does not receive almost any bonuses from items. This is the class that has the received characteristics. The man struck him with a blow, which he blocked, but his hands trembled. After which, another opponent immediately ran up to him and he raised his sword over his head. He wanted to hit him, but could not break through his defense. After which, he increased the distance between them and thought that they had their weaknesses. Fighters have simply terrible skill indicators. Victory is inevitable. Looking at the guy with an axe, he decided to start with this fool and pounced on him, but he blocked his sword with an axe and laughed loudly. After which, he swung his weapon. Fortunately, Aki managed to duck, but did not notice how the fat man crept up on him from behind. He hit him in the back with his forehead, causing him to fall and roll on the ground, and then cursed silently, thinking that fighting against a crowd is not that easy. However, he felt how weak they were. Gathering his thoughts, he picked up his sword, took a deep breath, and prepared himself for battle, thinking that victory was almost in his hands. The Revenant leader realized that this guy was not that simple and told the others to be careful, but let them not coddle him. It was time for them to finish him off. Their veins bulged from the strength coming to their fists, and the system informed MC that he learned the skill Body Enhancement. One of the criminals called Aki an idiot and ordered him to show what he can do, and he immediately approached him, and he, not expecting this, pulled out his weapon in front of him to defend himself. MC said that he could do what they could, then used his body enhancement skills and delivered a sweeping blow to the opponent's shoulder, causing him to scream loudly in pain. His blade dug in so deep that it killed the guy right away, and he thought that the timing was, as always, on point. Now he could enjoy it to his heart's content. Seeing what he had done to his comrade, the fat man ran towards him, and Aki, using his blade dance skill, threw several energy strikes at him, which, unfortunately, did not cause any damage due to the armor. The fat man recognized his techniques. It was a skeleton technique after all. But where did a classless idiot get such a skill from? He wanted to hit him with his forehead again, but instead he ran into a stone and looked at it in shock, because his opponent had just been here. Meanwhile, MC was already right above him. He raised his sword above his head, then fell and delivered a powerful blow, finishing off the criminal. In the end, there was one more left. He himself did not expect that he would jump so high. After all, body enhancement is the best skill. Seeing the death of his comrades, the man became very nervous and exclaimed, "Who the hell is he? What the hell is a classless idiot doing treating them like children? They did not sign up for this." He shouted Akira's name and called him an idiot, which made MC frown. It was clear that someone was cooperating with them. Suddenly, a fat man grabbed his leg. It turns out he was still alive. Holding the guy in place, he told his comrade to finish him off, and he, plucking up courage, rushed to attack, after which he threw something at his forehead. The newly appeared wound on his forehead began to bleed. From his throw, Aki was thrown back and rolled on the ground, which made the criminals happy. Everything started to swim in front of his eyes. He realized that he was starting to lose consciousness, but when he remembered his sister, he immediately came to his senses, causing his opponents to be surprised. Leaning on his sword, he began to rise. He was full of strength, only because he swore to himself that he would never let his sister die. Wiping the blood from his face, he used his body enhancement and shouted that he would not lose to idiots like them. Lunging forward, he quickly dealt with these criminals, leaving behind only bleeding corpses, and the system reported that the emergency task was successfully completed. He received a reward. A key appeared in his hand, which the system immediately offered him to use, but he decided not to rush yet. After that, he carried the bodies of the revenants out of the dungeon, and since he spent a lot of energy fighting them, he began to lose consciousness, and the police became very worried. He fell to the ground unconscious, and the men hurried to call an ambulance for him. Meanwhile, the same Akira called someone to figure out what was going on. The man apologized to him, explaining that someone had interfered, and Akira wondered who the scumbag was. The man gave him information about him, and the guy mockingly asked, "Is he kidding?" The man told him that this was accurate information, which made him laugh and ask, "Was it a classless E-ranker who did this?" He shouldn't have crossed him. He won't calm down until he pays him back. This guy's full name is Akira Babazono. He's a streamer and model, and also an S-rank adventurer, as well as the founder of the Blood Serpent clan of assassins. Now Aki is definitely finished. Time passed. After that incident, MC sat down at home and started training. It seems like he recovered from that fight, but he is tormented by one question. Who is behind those idiots? He's probably not as weak as they are. That's why he needs to get stronger. He can't take such risks anymore. After finishing the push-ups, he took the key that he recently received as a reward and wondered what it was for. The system offered him to use it, and he agreed. After which, a portal suddenly appeared next to him, and he was pulled inside. He disappeared from his room and fell face down in the sand, then raised his head and looked around. Seeing golden sands and huge rocks ahead, he realized that he was in a dungeon, and it was called the Labyrinth of the Sunstone. This is bad. All his equipment remained in the outside world, so he needs to get out of here. He wanted to get up, but suddenly felt crumbs under his clothes and began to shake himself off in irritation. When falling, sand got everywhere it could. Time passed. He wandered through the dungeon, enduring the scorching sun. Wiping the sweat from his face, he noticed that there were no monsters visible at all, and this smelled like trouble. He took a step and an unexpected sound was heard, a crunch, as if he stepped on something. He decided to check what was hidden under the sand and dug up a blue magic stone, and he immediately realized where he was. It was a dungeon with resources. He immediately fell to his knees and began to dig the sand, thinking that this couldn't be happening. This dungeon was super rare. The rarest magic stones could be found here, including the stone that would save his sister. Time passed. He dug up many magic crystals. His hands were already bleeding, and he himself was very tired. Finally, he found what he was looking for. The moon magic stone. He picked it up in shock and smiled when he realized that he wasn't imagining it. With it, his sister would finally recover. And all this thanks to the key he received for completing the quest. The disease that struck Natsu would later be called a magic vortex. The only substance that could cope with this ailment was the extract of the moon magic stone. To create a cure, 10 such stones were needed. A start had been made. He still had to find 9 more. With renewed vigor, he continued excavating. But no matter how much time passed, he still could not find another such stone. He hit the sand with his hand in despair and caught his breath. After which, the system reported that time was up. The dungeon would soon close. The movement begins. He cursed loudly and a portal appeared behind him, which began to pull him inside. He tried to grab the sand and asked the system to wait. He was not finished yet, but the portal was stronger. It pulled him in and returned him home. Falling to the floor, he clenched his teeth in frustration, and then quickly rushed to the place where the portal had just been, and began to pound the wall with his hands with heart-rending screams. His bloody palms stained the white walls, and he bowed his head in despair, thinking that this was not enough. After he calmed down, he lay down on the bed and looked at the moonstone with the thought that in all this time he could only find one. Closing his eyes, he played through the events in his head that led him to the key, and realized that he needed to get into the dungeon with resources again. The key is probably given for extremely dangerous tasks, but it's a small price to pay for saving his sister. Suddenly, there was a crunching sound behind him. First he thought it was the remains of sand, but instead, he pulled out an unknown magic stone from his pants, amber with an insect. In the end, he has this and the moonstone. Everything else is trash for sale. He decided to show this amber to the appraiser, after which he went to the shower. But as soon as the water got on his wounded hands, he screamed in pain. The next day, he will go to the hospital to see his sister, and again brought her something. She was very happy about his arrival, and when he said that he had a gift for her, she clapped her hands in anticipation, but when he showed her a pendant made of moonstone, she was not delighted. Natsu apologized to him and smiled awkwardly, saying that she did not need it. He was very surprised and exclaimed, "What's wrong?" She told him that this pendant was a little tasteless. He was very upset by this and decided to leave, but at the end he clarified, "Is she sure she doesn't need it?" She confirmed this and wished him good luck at work, after which he left the hospital room and with tears in his eyes put the pendant on his neck, and the nurse thought, in surprise, did he buy everything for himself again? After that, he went to the guild, or more specifically, to the evaluation department. They say that magic stones are checked here. When he saw a man with a sly look, he didn't like him at first, but he, noticing his reaction, told him not to be afraid. He was a master of his craft. He was afraid for a second that he read his mind, after which he pointed to the moon magic stone and said that he would like to know more about it. But let him look at this first. He put the amber on the table, and the man, having carefully examined it, looked up at it with a grin and said that he was lucky. This thing is extremely unusual. This is a magic stone that can enchant weapons. Thinking back to how he had come across such stones before, Aki mentally called it trash, and the appraiser said that it was strange. He looked like he didn't care. This is the amber magic stone of Chigui. Let him not underestimate it. MC had an idea. What would happen if he enchanted a sword with this stone? He asked the appraiser about it, and the appraiser told him that he didn't know, but selling it would ensure his early retirement. Seeing his cold reaction again, he asked if he wasn't interested. Let him just imagine, he's so young and doesn't have to work. Aki thoughtfully rubbed his chin and said that he knew that Chigui absorbed the souls of the monsters whose blood it drank, gaining their power. Is this stone capable of granting the same ability? The appraiser shrugged and told him that he wouldn't know until he tried it himself. MC smiled and asked if he could enchant the sword. The man agreed, and after a while gave him the enchanted sword, saying that it was nice to have and do with it. Now he had to try it out, but he didn't even know where. and the guild just had a room specially designated for this. The training ground, Summoner's Hall. The guild worker, a girl mage, asked Aki to come over. She checked his bracelet and, having learned his class, treated him like everyone else. After which she created a magic circle on the floor and said that in that case, this monster would suit him. The magic circle sparkled brightly under their feet, and then an E-rank monster appeared in the center of it, a fluffy one. It seemed cute in appearance, but its huge mouth and sharp fangs confirmed that appearances are deceiving. He looked at the fluffy monster without a drop of fear, and then with one swing of the sword he cut it in half, and suddenly green energy appeared around the blade. It absorbed something from the fluffy monster's powers. Seeing this, the girl was very surprised, and MC's magical defense meanwhile increased by 1 point. He immediately checked the status window and realized that his stats had increased. The girl asked what it was, and he asked her not to pay attention to it, after which he asked with a grin, "Can she only summon weak monsters?" His words touched her and she decided to show him her powers. From now on, monsters will be summoned until he gives up. At that very moment, a guy and a girl named Yuki entered the training hall and asked for permission to join, to which the summoner answered them that it was Aki's time now, so let them wait their turn. The man took a black card out of his pocket and asked, what if he asked for a mass summon? He turned to Aki and asked, he doesn't mind, does he? Of course, everything will be at his expense. The girl was very happy with such a big order, and from a VIP person, an MC wasn't against free monsters either. Having heard his consent, she got down to business and, having looked through their information, created a magic circle on the ground and summoned many goblins, the number of which surprised Aki. An adventurer passed by him and said that this was expected from a summoner. By the way, what is his class? He answered him that he was classless, and the man raised one eyebrow in bewilderment, and then laughed and apologized to him for dragging him into this. He told him that it was nothing to worry about, after which the man and his woman took out their weapons and began to fight. Noticing the adventurers quickly approaching them, the goblins decided to pounce on them first, and one of them jumped and hit the guy with a wooden club, but he blocked it, then swung it at his legs, causing him to fall. After that, he raised a dagger over him and stabbed him in the chest, causing a scream to ring out throughout the room, and he turned to his friend, happily telling her that he had already killed one. She showed him the bloody blade and said that she had done it too, after which the guy was about to attack the rest of the monsters in anticipation. But when he saw a pile of corpses on the floor and MC standing in the middle of them, he froze in surprise. Aki said calmly that they quickly ended, and the guy and the girl exclaimed in surprise, "Was it he who killed everyone?" MC confirmed this and, patting the man on the shoulder, thanked him. He himself could hardly afford such a mass summoning. He said goodbye to them and headed for the exit, but the summoner stopped him and noted that his movements did not look like an E-rank. "This is simply unbelievable. Who is he?" He said his name and class, and the girl's face darkened, after which she invited him to come again. But next time she will summon stronger monsters, and it will not be so easy for him anymore. He only smiled in response and went to the locker room. While he was taking a bath, he thought that he killed 42 goblins, but received only 3 points. Apparently, he cannot absorb the soul from all monsters. However, now his strength will increase with each kill, and this is very good. When he came out of the locker room, he found the guild workers running around in alarm. One of them noticed him and asked, "Is he his adventurer?" After hearing a positive answer, he informed him that they had a breakthrough again, so all the adventurers should urgently head to the dungeon. This news made Aki worried. The dungeon breakthrough occurs because there are so many monsters inside that they start coming out into their world. A system window with an emergency task appeared in time, which made him happy. He needs to close the breakthrough by eliminating the cause. These words confused him. Does a breakthrough have a cause? He thought that it happens by chance. The man told him not to stand still. His help is needed at the front. MC agreed and went to the locker room to collect all his things, and the man began to hurry him. The next station is Shibuya. People ran in panic in all directions and goblins pursued them. The running girl tripped over something and fell, and in the goblin's eyes, she immediately became an easy target. He pounced on her and she screamed loudly in fear, but the danger was over. The goblin lost his head. Aki came to the rescue in time, and the girl, first looking at him, and then at the goblin's corpse, called him a warrior and thanked him for his help. He told her that he was not a warrior, but classless, and this greatly surprised her. Despite the fact that he had just saved her, she rushed to run and with tears in her eyes screamed that they would all die, and he looked after her in bewilderment and asked, "Was she serious?" Meanwhile, the rest of the adventurers encountered a serious opponent. One of them had already left the formation, trying to strike him. A D-rank hobgoblin robbed a store and ate something, then came out of the darkness, and the adventurers, realizing how strong this monster was, immediately started running. leaving their comrade. They ran past the MC and the remaining adventurer told him to run. It was dangerous here. If he stayed, he would most likely die, but he was not going to run. He took out a sword from behind his back and confidently introduced himself to him, and also named his class. And then the man in shock thought that he would only get in his way. Suddenly a car flew towards him. Seeing this, he was very scared, but at the last moment he managed to jump to the side. Meanwhile, the hobgoblin laughed. He liked this sight and began to clap his hands happily. And Aki thought that this type of monsters have high attack, but they are deprived of intelligence. He told the man that they still have a lot of work. They need to finish him off, and quickly. After catching his breath, he stood up and told him that everything was simple in words. But MC didn't listen to him and said that he would distract him, after which he started to run. The man thought that he had simply abandoned him, but for some reason, the hobgoblin didn't fight him and preferred to pursue the fugitive. Aki turned around and nodded briefly to the man, and he, trying to understand what he was trying to tell him, looked at the monster's back and finally realized what he needed to do. Since the entire back was open, it was just the perfect place to strike, and he thrust his sword into the goblin. But this only angered him. He turned around displeased, and the adventurer, meeting his gaze, shuddered in fear, and when he saw that the enemy was swinging his sword, he cursed loudly. MC arrived in time. He pierced the goblin with his sword and told the man that he did a great job. After killing the hobgoblin, his attack power was increased by 1. Extending his hand to the man, he asked if he was okay and could continue fighting, and the man stared at him in surprise. His mood suddenly changed, and he grabbed his hand with a confident smile, saying that he still had plenty of strength, but suddenly there was some noise from the side. Several high-ranking adventurers ran down the street, and the man happily said that here came the cavalry. Just a little more, and they would have been finished. Now that the high-ranking adventurers had intervened, they needed to ensure the safety of the civilians. Saying that he understood everything, Aki started to run, and the man asked in a panic what exactly did he understand. He ran after him, and noticing that he turned into an alley, asked where he was going. It turns out that Aki was heading to the place of the breakthrough. It turned out to be a dual dungeon where low and high-level adventurers can be. The portal had already been fenced off, and while MC was looking at it, a man ran up to him and caught his breath, and he asked why he followed him. He told him that it was because he was going to go to a dangerous place alone. MC noted that he was kind, but also stupid, and the adventurer indignantly exclaimed that he could have stopped at kind. He may be strong, but it is not right to fight alone. He is also taking risks. He confidently clenched his hand into a fist and offered him a drink when everything is over, and Aki smirked, telling him to make sure that this does not turn into a death flag. The man became curious about why he decided to go into the dungeon, and he told him that he wanted to figure out the cause of the breakthrough. He was surprised by his answer. He, like MC, thought that the occurrence of the breakthrough was accidental, but because of that task, MC wanted to figure everything out himself. He walked towards the portal and reached out his hand to it, but suddenly bright sparks gushed out from there, preventing him from entering. Despite this, he continued to walk forward. He was ready to do anything to find the moonstone. Suddenly, the portal began to glow brighter, and then there was an explosion that threw him back. The man asked if everything was okay, and by that moment, the portal seemed to have calmed down, but something began to crawl out of it, which greatly surprised the adventurer. A C-rank monster, Echo Karulkan, emerged from the portal, holding a watch with that same magical sign in its paws. The dragon asked how he managed to find it, and when Aki said that he knew this sign, he exclaimed in surprise, "How did he know about it?" He immediately crawled out of the portal, deciding to get rid of it. And the man, looking at him in horror, raised his weapon and said that it seemed like he accidentally planted the death flag. The protagonist watched the monster's movement, holding the sword tightly in his hands. Then, at the last moment, MC saved the adventurer from the monster's attack. Aki noticed the sword and wondered if it was rust, although it was more like rot. If it hit him, they would disappear. He said he had to leave him. He was only getting in his way. The protagonist asked, "Didn't they agree to drink together?" He looked at him with admiration. The monster used its ability again. The adult adventurer shouted that this would be their most delicious sake. The protagonist noted that he was not allowed to drink alcohol. He was still underage. Afterwards, the MC got into a fighting stance, holding the sword in one hand. He asked in confusion, what was he planning? Aki thought that he had already fought such monsters that used breath. Echo Karulkan asked with a grin, did he really expect to win? The monster rushed at him, and at the last moment the protagonist dodged and counterattacked. The protagonist looked at his hand and thought that this would not be easy. Echo Karulkan prepared to use his breath again. MC thought that dragons do not burn their throats with their own breath. They have a magic point in their throats. They spew their magic from there. He must strike that spot. Aki used body enhancement and used the skill, Blade Dance, striking his enemy. Echo Kurulkan asked, did he dodge? The protagonist thought that breathing requires a huge amount of mana. He will strike at the moment of preparation. The protagonist dealt a series of blows to his enemy, causing cracks to appear on the scales. After another powerful blow, the scales of the monster could not withstand and collapsed. MC struck the monster with his sword. Suddenly, Echo Kurulkan used its tail to push him back. The monster rushed at him, but at the last moment, an adult adventurer with a shield stood in his way. Aki looked at him in surprise. He shouted, "Is he okay? He can only help with this." The protagonist smiled and noted that this would be enough. Suddenly, Echo Kurulkan collapsed to the ground. The adult adventurer shouted in surprise, "What happened?" The protagonist noted that it was because of the dispatch. He used the technique he learned from the hobgoblin. The monster growled, expressing its displeasure and anger. MC swung his sword and dealt a crushing blow to Echo Kurulkan. The system window reported that the defense points were absorbed. His level has increased to 7. The emergency task has been completed. He can receive his reward. Aki activated the reward, and the system window reported that it was the adventurer's key. The protagonist thought with a change in expression that he thought he would encounter monsters like Echo Kurulkan more than once. The adult adventurer asked what it was. The protagonist silently put the key away and began to wipe his weapon with a rag. He said with a smile that he was asking for his forgiveness. He shouldn't meddle in other people's business. That's why he has no luck with girls. MC let out a short laugh. The adult adventurer grabbed his neck with his hand and asked happily if he wasn't going to object. Aki smiled while he was laughing. The bureau chief asked in surprise, "Was this their doing?" The adult adventurer stated, pointing his index finger at Aki, that it was mostly his doing. He used the device and said, "Aki, right? He will remember it." The breakthrough stopped. The gate stabilized. Do they know what this is connected with? The main character thought that this time he wouldn't be able to get out of the situation. The protagonist said that when they killed the monster, the gate returned to normal. The bureau chief thoughtfully said that this was interesting. The breakthrough was considered a random event. So there was a reason for it? The MC said that he couldn't know. He was only saying what he had seen personally. Afterwards, Aki left with the adult adventurer. The assassin noted that he was leaving. Did he really want to let him go? He could extract information from him. Of course, there would be a price to pay for this. The bureau chief noted that there was no need to do that. He didn't want to ruin their relationship. He had a sick sister. The knight asked if he wanted to call this newbie. The swordswoman asked if this was for money. The sorceress said with a grin that she was already scared. The adults were just crazy. He said that they needed strong fighters. They had a great battle ahead. Aki could definitely be their calling card. Afterwards, the bureau chief called Babazono and said that he wanted him to join them. Can he do me a favor? After a while, in the protagonist's room. The protagonist was packing his things in his backpack when a message came on his phone. MC took the phone in his hand and read that they were happy to inform him that he had been promoted to D rank. Aki thought with a smile, now he was level 7 and D rank, that was great. Everything was going according to plan. After that, his sister sent him a link to an article that said that they needed to meet the future star. Classless Aki and healer Naomi. Aki thought that she was doing well too. A message from his sister appeared on the phone screen. Was he really classless? The protagonist sent a message that he had a good reason to be classless. After a while, the protagonist said, taking out the adventurer key, that he was ready. A system window appeared warning that this key was for high-level adventurers. Perhaps his level was not high enough. Is he sure he wants to continue? MC thought about it and then chose that he wanted to continue. The system window said that it was a good choice. They welcomed him. Suddenly, a gate appeared and began to pull Aki inside. After a while, the protagonist appeared in the throne room. A system window appeared with information that this was an A-rank dungeon, Alfheim. The protagonist thought, what kind of dungeon is this? The Elven King noted that he was a human who was directed by the will of God. What is his name? MC thought, what kind of will of God are we talking about? Is this really a quest? Aki introduced himself and said that he came here to find the moon magic stone. He asked to cure the magic disease, so it was true. If he wanted, he could make healing potions. However, the moon magic stone is also valuable to them. The protagonist furiously asked, do they really want him to take it by force? The Elven King said with a smile that he had an interesting reaction. The will of God directed a good adventurer. The servant turned to his ruler. He asked what was the matter. Then the Elven King asked in surprise, is this possible? Is he classless? Is this accurate information? The protagonist asked if there was some problem. He nervously said that it was nothing to worry about. The Elven King thoughtfully said that the will of God is never wrong. His task would be a duel with a great sinner. MC asked what that meant. He explained that the sinner's crime was killing his own kind. This monster enjoys killing peaceful citizens of his country. He uses magic to sow chaos and destruction in settlements. For them, killing their own kind is a terrible sin. Aki asked, crossing his arms, that's why they need an outsider, right? He noted that his judgment was correct. They would reward him if he fulfilled their request. The protagonist smiled and said, extending his hand, that he agreed. The Elven King rose from his throne and shook the man's hand, saying that the duel would take place tomorrow. Until then, he suggested that he explore the city. The protagonist asked, do they have a city? After a while, on a city street, an elf greeted Aki and said that she would give him a tour of the city today. MC noted that this was somehow unusual for him. Is this really a dungeon? She said that this dungeon is special. Guests from other worlds come here once every 10 years. Aki asked, what happened to the guests? The elf noted with a smile that they died. The protagonist said that now he understands. The protagonist thought that she was talking so calmly about death. After a while, the elves in the square were loudly applauding. She noted that there seemed to be some kind of event going on. Does he want to take a look? MC said that he would not mind taking a look. The street performer said that they could come closer. He wanted to show them an interesting little spell. He used the skill boost and launched a fireball into the sky and then blew it up in the air. Aki thought in surprise that it was impressive. And it was a fireball? The street performer noted with a bow that it was magic that temporarily strengthened their spells and skills. The elf said with a smile, while the elves cheered happily, that it was a newly invented spell. The system window reported that he had learned skill enhancement. The protagonist applauded with a smile and thought that it was great. He had easily received a useful buff. This was already a good start, as night fell at the city market. The elf noted that this was all for today. The protagonist said that he would like to look around more tomorrow. She said with a smile that she would only be happy to do so. If he could survive the duel, of course. MC looked at her with a gloomy expression and then said goodbye to her. Sometime later in the arena, Aki was waiting for his opponent on the court. A huge elf was brought into the arena, and the protagonist thought, what did they feed him? The sinner asked with a grin, if he killed him, then he would be completely justified, right? He used a spell, Macrophelna, which enveloped the skies in dark energy with a magic circle. The protagonist gritted his teeth and thought, could he seriously change the weather? The sinner said that the fight should be spectacular. He would become a victim of a great spell. Then a downpour began, and he used a spell, Aquanavarium, due to which streams of water surrounded Aki from all sides. The protagonist covered his face with his hand and thought that it was a curse. It was like he was standing under a waterfall. The protagonist grabbed the hilt of the sword with both hands. The opponent used a spell, Noctiviscaria, and a viscous substance formed under his feet. As a result, MC was trapped. His feet sank into the ground up to his waist. Aki thought, sinking deeper and deeper into the ground, what kind of witchcraft is this? The protagonist shouted, trying to free himself, that it was a curse. The elves on the platform joyfully called for him to be killed. The sinner asked, what was wrong with the man? He had only just begun. He shouted, grinning maliciously, that he was a greedy idiot. He should be afraid of his overwhelming power. The servant noted that it was still too hard for humans. The elf king said that it did not matter. The main thing was that none of the elves would die. The protagonist thought that at this rate, his head would be hung over the fireplace. MC activated body strengthening and skill enhancement, and he was able to escape from the trap. Aki thought that he was lucky to have met that street performer. Now it was much easier for him to move. The protagonist used the skill Blade Dance, bringing down energy in the form of a crescent moon on his enemy. The sinner blocked the blow with ice magic and said, directing the magic at him, that human magic is so primitive. The system window reported that the passive skill, Ice Defense, was activated. Effect, Protection from Cold. He shouted, using his abilities, that now he will show all his power. The sinner used a spell. Crystallis Chimeras and shards of ice appeared above the protagonist's head, which then fell on him. A huge block of ice formed in the arena, and the elves in the stands joyfully exclaimed. He shouted that the show was over. Now he is a free elf. The sinner asked, turning to the ruler, is this true? The elf king remained silent, and suddenly the block of ice was destroyed by powerful energy. They all stared at the block of ice in surprise. MC used a sweeping blow to free himself from imprisonment. He asked with a grin, does that mean he was able to survive? That's even good. Aki thought that he is not as strong as he thinks. This elf reminds him of someone. The sinner stated that he would at least have some fun. He said, creating a sphere of dark energy in his hand, that it was time for them to up the ante. He would show him true skill. The protagonist thought, smiling, so he decided to strengthen his abilities. He wants to see how far he can go. In any case, he knows how to defeat him. The protagonist remembered that he once met a stupid elf in the dungeon. He accidentally set his hair on fire with his own spell and ran away in panic. Most likely he mistakenly thought that he used it. He did not understand magic at all back then. He sees an opportunity for his victory. MC looked at the audience, and the sinner shouted that he should not be distracted from the fight. Suddenly, in an instant, MC closed the distance between them. Aki used his skills and tried to hit him, but he dodged with a grin. Then the sinner used magic and deftly dodged the next blow. He asked, "Is this really the only thing he can do?" The protagonist smiled, and the elf suddenly began to lose his hair. The sinner stared in shock. His hair had changed completely. The spectators looked on in surprise. He grabbed his head with his hands and shouted, "What the hell is going on?" The protagonist noted that most of the elves' mana was concentrated in their hair. Or did he not know that? At that moment, the sky dissipated over the arena and it became clear. MC shouted, rushing at him, that he must die. The elf tried to use a spell in anger, but it did not work. He said in fear that he had no more power. Aki dealt a crushing blow to the opponent with his sword. A system window appeared with information that 10 units of magic power had been absorbed. The Elf King declared that the sinner had been defeated. They should praise the adventurer. Thank the gods for sending him. Then he said, shaking his hand, that he had managed to deal with him. The Elf King quietly asked how he knew that their magic was in their hair. He had to keep it a secret, and in return, he would give him this. The system window reported that it was an abyss magic stone. The protagonist shouted in surprise, "Was it really an abyss magic stone?" He remarked that he wondered where he knew about it, although it was unimportant. He could show it to the enchanter. He would tell him how to use it. However, he must not forget about it. The protagonist said that he would fulfill his promise to keep their secret. The Elf King said, while the servant was handing over the bag, that it was a moon magic stone. MC happily took the bag with the reward. He noted that for his services he would give him something else. This is the recipe for the moon magic stone. Aki shouted in shock. Was he serious? He wanted to know more about it. Suddenly, a gate appeared and began to suck him in. The Elf King said that he was saying goodbye to him. If the gods were kind, they would see each other again. Sometime later, in the protagonist's room, the protagonist asked, "So there is a recipe for a magic stone? Will they really be able to overcome the magic vortex?" Sometime later, in the conference room, the bureau chief opened the door and said that he apologized for being late. It was high time for them to start. As he arrived, the employee said that he was already online. He turned on the screen using the remote control where MC was training hard. They looked at the TV screen in surprise. The bureau chief called him by name. Aki asked what was the matter. He asked him to get dressed. The protagonist said that he apologized. He thought he would have time. Why did they contact him? The bureau chief said that he wanted to offer him a job. The protagonist asked what the job was. He said that they were gathering the best adventurers in the country for this purpose, and Alice recommended him. She hoped that he would not refuse them. MC said he understood the gist of it. However, he wanted to know the details of the job. The bureau chief said it was classified information. Therefore, he asked not to spread it to third parties. He sent the information to his phone screen. Aki asked what it was. He said it was adventurer death data. The protagonist's expression changed and he noted that it listed PK adventurers. The bureau chief said it was hard to believe, but it was a fact. It included accidents during adventures, but he wanted to talk about it. The protagonist asked if it was about player killers, right? Their expressions changed, as if he had pressed a sore spot. He said with a smile that it was surprising that he knew about it. Information about it had not been made public yet. MC noted that he had heard about it from rumors. Aki thought that in his time, they were not a secret. They wanted him to help them get rid of PK? The bureau chief said to let him hear about it from rumors. In any case, there is an organization consisting of PKs, and they took the bait. All they have to do is spring the trap. The protagonist said that he understood everything. He smiled and said that he was glad to work with a person who understood everything. The bureau chief said that the mission was dangerous, but the reward would be appropriate. His reputation would also increase. Besides, he had recently spent a lot on hospital bills, right? This was a good offer for him, in his opinion. The protagonist thought, so they know about his sister? MC said that he agreed to participate in this mission. They could send him the operation plan so that he could prepare. He said that he was grateful for his help. He knew that he could rely on him. They had already sent the plan to his phone. Considering all the merits and abilities, the S-rank adventurer, Akira, was appointed in charge of this mission. After some time in the forest, the monster growled menacingly. Akira asked, "Can they see everything?" It is a B-rank monster. This monster is easy to defeat if you know its weak points. The monster pounced on him, but he dodged at the last moment. Akira said, appearing on the monster's head, that one of its weak points is the bump on its head. He struck the monster with lightning-fast daggers. Akira asked, "It's pretty simple, right? they could see for themselves. The girls watched him in admiration through a live broadcast of the dungeon. After a while, they came out of the dungeon, and the fangirls surrounded him, thanking him for the stream. Akira happily shouted that he thanks them for watching him. He loves them all. Afterwards, he got into the car and irritably stated that it was terrible. It pisses him off to interact with such trash. The driver said that he should watch his words. A message came from the blood serpent. Akira checked the message on his phone, which said that they were trapped. Everything was going according to plan. He could enjoy it. He laughed and said that this was great news. What kind of scum would they send this time? Now that was interesting. The driver asked if the adventurer who defeated the revenants would really be there. Akira said with a grin that it was. He already wanted to see him in the red dungeon. Sometime later, in the hospital, the nurse thought that he came with roses today. The protagonist entered his sister's room, calling her name. Natsu was happy to see him, and noted that these were very beautiful flowers. The protagonist said that they were for her. And there was more good news. Perhaps they would soon be able to cure her. She looked at her brother in surprise. Natsu noted that the doctor said that such a disease was incurable. MC took her hands and said that everything will be fine. She said with a smile that she believes in her brother. At this time, the nurse watched this touching scene, wiping away her tears. After Natsu said, showing it in the book, that the language of yellow roses means the fading of love. Aki was shocked by this news. The protagonist left his sister's room upset. The nurse thought that he still does not understand many things. It can also mean selflessness. After some time in the park near the hospital, the protagonist decided to call Alice. She asked how he was doing. MC said that he was told that she recommended him. Alice asked, "So about that job?" She thanks him for taking on this mission. Unfortunately, she cannot go there. However, there should be other strong adventurers there, such as Akira Babazono and Ichinose Eru. These two are very strong adventurers. Aki said that he understood her. The protagonist thought, so Akira has the assassin class? Then Alice asked if they could go on a date after finishing this job. The protagonist asked if she was serious. She said that she insisted on it. He is very talented, as she expected. She wants to get to know him better. The MC said that he will think about it. Alice happily said that he is so untouchable. It is even cute. She will wait for their date. Aki thought, is this really the prime of his youth? After a while, the adventurer manager said that he is grateful to everyone who came here. Tonight, they will put an end to the nightmare of all adventurers. They will stop the PK adventurers. It will be hard work, but they will definitely do it. And he appoints him as the leader of this mission. Akira said, introducing himself, that they can rely on him. The system window reported that Akira is an S-rank adventurer. His class is assassin. He confidently said that together, they would definitely win. The adventurers started to applaud him, and the protagonist joined in, clapping his hands subduedly, studying him carefully. Eru asked, "Isn't that Aki?" MC asked, depending on who's asking. She asked, "Didn't Alice tell about her?" Eru said, introducing herself as Alice's first student. The system window reported that Eru is an A-rank adventurer. Her class is an archer. She looked at him carefully and noted that Alice values him very much. Eru irritatedly said that, however, she will not lose. Shirota Taiki asked, what was she making such a fuss about? She angrily told him to shut up. She introduced her ally. The system window reported that Taiki is an A-rank adventurer. His class is an alchemist. Eru asked, why did Alice recommend such a low-rank adventurer? He noticed that she probably knew more about him than they did. She said irritably that he shouldn't protect him. Taiki thought that she was being noisy as usual. Suddenly, a system window appeared with a task that he should steal Akira's smartphone. The protagonist thought in surprise, why do this? Are they making fun of him? At that moment, Akira was watching him with a smirk. Sometime later, on the plane, the protagonist was watching a video on a tablet. A miniature knight on the screen said hello and said that he wanted to explain the plan for today's operation. In the dungeon, rookie adventurers acting as bait are being briefed by a mentor. Due to the confidentiality of the information, they were not told about today's plan. Blood Serpent and his team of player killers fell for the information they sent them, and now they are planning an attack. They, the hunter team, rush in at the moment the killers appear, and their goal is to eliminate all these PKs. That's where the explanation of the operation plan ends. He wishes everyone good luck. After a while, MC watched as Akira calmed down the other adventurers. Aki thought that Akira had been the center of attention ever since they took off. At this rate, he wouldn't be able to steal his smartphone. Eru whispered, was he really classless? The protagonist said he was. She remarked that it was terrible. He was watching Akira now. Was he a fan of his? The protagonist said that he was, in a way. Eru said with a smile that he was a liar. MC asked why she thought that. She remarked that he looked at him differently, with the gaze of a hunter. It was as if he was waiting for the moment when he would show weakness. She was right, right? Eru stated that archers were very sharp-sighted. No matter what he was planning, she would help him. Alice asked for this. After a while, the flight attendant reminded Aki as he was getting off the plane that they should not forget about being careful when descending. Suddenly, Eru bumped into Akira, and she apologized to him. Akira asked if she was hurt. She said she was fine. He was Akira, right? She was a big fan of his. Afterwards, the protagonist thought that he didn't expect that the experience of a former assassin would come in handy in such a way. The system window reported that the task was completed. He received a new reward. He received the skill, Cat's Paw. The protagonist looked at Eru and thought that she really helped, but there was something strange about her. A notification came to Akira's phone. MC looked at the phone screen and thought that now he understood what was going on. After a while, a bus arrived at the gate to the dungeon. Afterwards, the bureau chief noted that if the information was reliable, then they should be ahead. They should not hold back. They shouted that they needed to punish evil. After a while, Eru asked if he was sure about this, because it sounded like absolute nonsense. Because of it, they had to skip breakfast. Her expression changed, and she said that she never imagined it would be like this. The protagonist put his hand on her shoulder and said that they could handle it. He would think of something. Eru said that he should find a job. The MC noted with irritation that he had a job. Akira shouted that he would lead them to victory. They should follow him. Then she noticed the ominous expression on Akira's face. Aki said that she needed to calm down. She was an experienced fighter. Eru thought that now she understood why Alice liked him so much. Sometime later, in an ancient E-rank dungeon, the rookie adventurers were almost at the gate when suddenly there was a rumble ahead. Fallen trees blocked their path and PK adventurers appeared behind them. The mentor adventurer shouted who they were. Suddenly, he was crushed by a single spell. The rookies looked at the PKs in fear, who said that it was time for them to have fun. Akira said with a grin that they were absolutely right. The group of hunters shouted that they would not let them, the player killers, go unpunished. He said with a smile, turning to the newbies, that he apologized to them for waiting. The newbies recognized him and were happy, and they said that if he was with them, then everything would be fine. Akira asked, "Are they sure about this?" Suddenly, the members of the hunter group began to lose consciousness, and the newbies became scared. Akira, along with PK, laughed maliciously. One of the hunters asked what this meant. He said, finishing him off with a kick, that only weak people bring trouble to the world. Akira said that in public, he is a bona fide S-rank adventurer, and he is also a popular streamer. However, they, a bunch of useless scum, do not even know how much he hates them. He thinks of them as damned parasites. The clan of player killers created Blood Serpent. In other words, it was him. They looked at him in horror. The killers shouted that they did not need to resist, they could not defeat him anyway. Akira declared, swinging his dagger, that it was true. This world does not need weak people. At the last moment, the protagonist blocked his blow with his sword. He asked why he was still unharmed. The protagonist showed his phone and noted that he had no appetite. Eru thought that she still could not believe that everything turned out this way. Akira's face changed, and he looked at him with a smirk. He noted that his phone was stolen. Didn't his mother teach him that stealing is bad? However, for some reason, he did not tell the other adventurers about him. Did he doubt what he saw? MC thought he was right. Only part of the message was visible due to the blocking. Moreover, he had allies in the suppression squad. He couldn't trust anyone. Eru shouted that, how could she not have realized that there was another rat among them? She pointed her index finger at Taiki, saying that it was the one who put poison in the food. Taiki said, taking out the substance in a test tube, that it was true. However, because of them, the plan changed a little. Akira clapped and happily said that it was exactly like that. They really tried hard. However, what are they going to do together against them? Besides, one of them is a D rank. PK laughed while Eru became nervous. Then she said that she would buy him time. He should go to the office and report everything to Alice at any cost. Aki said that he refused. Eru asked in surprise, how should she understand this? The protagonist noted that his mission is to eliminate the player killers. She shouted, is he crazy? He is only a D rank. The protagonist said that she does not need to worry about him. It is better for her to go get help. Eru shouted furiously that Alice told him to look after him. MC remarked that her loyalty was impressive. Aki thought that he didn't want her to die. Akira asked with a smile, appearing behind him, were they done chatting? The protagonist looked back in fear and turned to him. Eru shouted, when did he appear there? The protagonist thought that it was the assassin's movement skill, Shadow Slide. He noted that he had noticed it for a long time. He planned to kill all these insects. The new adventurers screamed in fear, while he approached Aki and asked if he could stop him. Akira shouted, turning to PK, that it was time to have fun. The protagonist and Eru were surrounded by player killers. Akira shouted as he disappeared into his shadow that he must not disappoint him. The player killers rushed at them, and they fired arrows at the opponents. However, the defeated enemies were replaced by new player killers who were approaching them. Eru prepared to shoot the arrow again, but suddenly the protagonist shouted that she needed to duck. After MC crushed several enemies with a powerful swing of the sword, she looked at him in surprise. Aki asked, now she sees what he is capable of? And she doubted it all this time. Eru screamed in horror. How did this even happen? How did he do that? Suddenly, a capsule was thrown at their feet, which cracked and released a poisonous cloud. They jumped back at the last moment. She thought that they were separated. Taiki declared that her opponent would be him. After all, they are both A-rank adventurers. It would be fair. Eru screamed, preparing to shoot her bow, that he is a traitor. He declared that in this cruel world, this is the only thing that matters. She said that he really pisses her off. Taiki declared, throwing test tubes at her, that only strength matters. Eru smashed the test tubes with arrows and she shouted that he should stop talking nonsense. The contents of the test tubes mixed, and to her surprise, a bright light suddenly flashed, and then an explosion occurred. Taiki said that she could not have expected this. It was quite easy. Suddenly an arrow pierced his shoulder, and he shouted, "What was the matter?" Eru asked, "Did he not expect this?" She said with a smile that she thanked him for the smokescreen. He said with difficulty that he really lost. Eru shouted, addressing him as a classless one, "He is still alive, right?" She saw him and said with a smile that he can be relied on. Akira suddenly appeared and asked, "Did he forget anyone?" The protagonist tried to dodge, but he did not manage to avoid being wounded. He smiled evilly and noted that, as usual, he is forced to do everything himself. The protagonist thought that the opponent was fast, as expected from an assassin. With his current skills, he won't be able to track his movements. He moves too fast. Eru shouted that he should run away. He has no chance against him. Akira used his ability, and MC smiled, surprising the girl. She thought, what should she understand? Why is he smirking? Aki prepared to strike with his sword, and then he threw his sword in such a way that it stuck into the opponent's shadow. Akira stared in shock, and the protagonist said that he apologized to him, but he was unlucky with the opponent. After a while, he kicked the sword, and noted that it was not an accident. How does he know the weakness of the skill? Shadow Slide? The protagonist said that he knows a little about the class, Assassin. Akira asked, is he serious? He is a very mysterious person. Then he knows what it is. He used his ability and dark energy burst out from his shadow. MC thought that this is an assassin skill, a dark contract. He summoned a demon. So he is a contract assassin. Aki caught the dagger flying at him and thought that this is the most popular class of the future. However, he was unlucky. The protagonist grabbed the demon by the hand and disarmed it, and then dealt a crushing blow to the monster. The system window reported that this was a summoned demon, Shadow Messenger. At that moment, the dark space dissipated and the newbies shouted that he succeeded. Akira picked up his dagger from the ground and said that it looks like his knowledge is not limited to general information about classes. However, it still won't help him. He rushed at him with a smirk on his face, and the protagonist blocked with his hands, but his opponent kicked him. Akira said that he can't defeat him, an S-rank adventurer. Eru shouted, preparing to shoot her bow, that he is just trash. She said, turning to Aki, that he should run away. Akira glared at her, then asked in annoyance what was so funny. The protagonist noted with a smile that he was just thinking how weak the assassin class was. His attacks did very little damage. The protagonist thought that if there was an opponent of such a rank with a different class, he would have died long ago. Akira asked if he was seriously talking about damage. So he thought he had a chance to win? MC said that of course he had such a chance. Aki thought that now was the time. The protagonist opened the status window, and the system window reported that he had mastery level 81. Eru asked in surprise, what kind of status was this? The protagonist said that the conditions had been met to unlock the hidden class. They looked at him in surprise. The system window reported that the class was unlocked. MC shouted that it was time to change classes. Aki thought, while his body was enveloped in a bright light, that this moment had finally come. All this was for this moment. A system window appeared informing him that he now had a secret class, Master. The protagonist appeared in a new image, and Akira asked in shock, what was going on? Eru asked in surprise, could a classless person really evolve into another class? The protagonist noted that the reason was different. It's just that with the class, classless, it is easiest to increase the level of mastery, with the help of which the secret class, Master, is opened. She asked, what does this even mean? Akira said that he does not understand what just happened. However, changing the class will not make him stronger than S-rank. Akira threw a dagger at him, using the skill Snake Strike, and the blades on the way multiplied. MC used crafting and created a troll greatsword, which appeared in front of him, causing the daggers to be thrown back. He shouted in irritation, how is this possible? He seriously summoned a weapon? Iki said that he created it. If this surprised him, then he should prepare himself. Suddenly, various weapons began to appear around the protagonist. Eru thought while their opponent was in shock that the magical power put into each weapon was simply unbelievable. The protagonist asked with a smile, "Is an S-rank assassin ready to see true skill?" Akira shouted, "Did he create all these weapons?" MC stated that it was exactly so, and besides, they were all original work, not a single copy. He thought, how was he able to create so many magical items? This is simply unbelievable. How can a D-rank adventurer do this? Aki asked what was the matter. Where did all his fighting spirit go? The protagonist crushed him with one blow of a huge sword. Suddenly, his body turned to stone, and the protagonist thought that it was just a clone. This was expected of the assassin class. Eru asked where he got such power from. Akira thought while in her shadow that he barely managed to hide. He is too dangerous. MC created a shining sword, the Luminous. Aki raised his sword and said that it should illuminate the darkness. Eru screamed in fear when she saw the S-rank adventurer behind her. The protagonist left the sword glowing in the air and created an ice sword, Frostbind. The protagonist used the magic swords and immobilized his enemy. Akira screamed, "What the hell is he? He was classless. How could he counter his skills so easily?" MC stated that when attack and defense stats are low, and the only advantage, speed, does not work, then his class is useless. He lost. Aki summoned many more ice swords and struck down his enemy, who screamed before being destroyed. The player killers looked at the body of their leader. The protagonist threateningly asked, surrounding himself with magic swords, "Are there any more volunteers?" They threw their weapons on the ground and humbly surrendered, raising their hands. The rookie adventurers cried out in joy. After a while, Eru said, holding out a bottle, that this was an antidote. He has to drink it all up. Afterwards, she looked at Aki, who was tying up PK. Eru wondered how he suddenly became so strong. The protagonist touched his head with his hand and thought that his mana was quickly running out. It seemed that he had overdone it a bit. She walked up to him and thanked him for his help. Eru asked what the hell was that? Where did such incredible power come from? The protagonist said that he had already explained it to her. MC thought that no one knew about it now. And that was no surprise. Even after 20 years, it was secret information that he had obtained with difficulty through S-rank connections. She asked how he was going to explain it to everyone. Was he really going to tell everyone that he was a D-rank adventurer, activated a hidden class, and destroyed an S-rank adventurer? At this rate, the whole world would be talking about him tomorrow. Aki thoughtfully said that it would be a problem. Eru said that it was a serious topic. The news can turn the entire adventure industry upside down. She will tell Alice everything and ask her to hide this information. She hopes that she can do it. By the way, about the hidden class, how does it work? Will she be able to unlock the hidden class, Master? The protagonist thought that unlocking the hidden class requires a mastery level. The mastery level increases differently for each weapon. It is especially difficult to develop a two-handed sword. Thanks to emergency quests and past life experience, he was able to reach the level of a master of a two-handed sword. However, others are unlikely to do this in one life. Eru said that he should tell her how she can do this. The protagonist noted that even if he told her, she would not be able to repeat it. She said that he was just greedy. MC said that instead, he could help her improve her archery skills. Eru asked if he was serious. Aki thought that in his past life, he learned a lot about legendary weapons. The protagonist said that he knew some useful things it would be useful to her. She asked how he knew all this. Who the hell is he? The protagonist said that he was an ordinary adventurer. Eru asked, he knows that this is actually annoying, right? MC said that he shouldn't tell her about it anyway. She said that she didn't even have such a plan. Afterwards, new adventurers approached them and thanked them for their help. They asked what his name was, what was that skill, what was his class. Eru whispered with a smile that this was a test for his secret. Aki said with a smile, introducing himself, that he can't tell them everything, but he can tell them some things. After some time at the Adventurer Bureau, the screen reported breaking news that S-rank adventurer, streamer and model Akira was arrested. People on the streets could not believe it. The news reported that he was accused of attempting to murder a group of rookie adventurers in an E-rank dungeon. He was caught red-handed in the act of attacking with dozens of his allies. The police believe that he founded a clan of player killers, Blood Serpent, and Akira is suspected of numerous attacks on adventurers. Law enforcement is conducting a thorough investigation into this incident. At this point, the staff was trying to answer multiple calls in a panic from people who wanted to know the details of what happened. Afterwards, they said that they need to look there. Is it really him coming? The protagonist asked if there is any work. The employee said that the situation is unstable now regarding this. Apparently, there will be a discussion on how to further interact with him. The protagonist asked what this means. Alice noted that it is nothing serious. MC called her name, looking at her. She said with a smile that there are too many people here. Can they talk somewhere else? After a while, in the conference room, Eru greeted him cheerfully, while the other people in the room looked at him sullenly. Aki asked, "Does that mean she's here too?" Alice pointed out that they've become friends. The protagonist said that he doesn't think so. She laughed at Eru's dumbfounded face. Alice patted her head and said that she must have had a hard time, but she did well. Eru's expression changed and said that it really wasn't easy. The bureau chief said, standing up, that he wanted to formally apologize for what happened. The staff bowed their heads in apology to Aki. He said that they failed to foresee that there would be a player killer in the execution squad. Alice pointed out that Akira had deceived them all, so it wasn't their fault. The bureau chief said that he had no excuses anyway. Aki received an additional payment as compensation. He would also be promoted to C rank. The protagonist said thoughtfully that he had been promoted to D rank a few days ago and was already moving up to the next rank. Eru asked in surprise, "Had this ever happened before?" He was advancing through the ranks very quickly. She shouted, looking at his face, that he should at least be happy for the sake of decency. The bureau chief noted that this had never happened before. In order to confirm his rank, he had invited 3 representatives of the Adventurer Bureau, General Director and S-rank adventurer Miyata Guki, as well as Alice. The protagonist asked, turning to Alice, "So she really was a representative?" Alice said with a smile that she was. She hoped that now he understood how influential she was. Guki destroyed the table with a punch and shouted that they needed to stop this already. They had not gathered to chat. He said, snatching the tablet from the employee, that he had heard rumors that a low-ranking adventurer had managed to defeat an S-rank assassin. Since then, his curiosity had been constantly tormented. He's only level 11, and what's more, a hidden class. Don't they think it's very suspicious? Guki grabbed his clothes with his hand and shouted while gritting his teeth. What if he's a fraud like Akira? What's his secret? He has to tell them. The MC said that he should move his hand away. He remarked that he has no desire to follow his orders. However, he can force him to do so if he uses his hidden class. The bureau chief shouted that fighting inside the bureau is forbidden. The CEO said that he shouldn't interfere with this. Let him show his strength. He shouted in fear, "Is this kind of behavior encouraged?" Eru shouted, "What are they up to? They have to stop this immediately." Guki shouted, "Was he scared?" Even after he was promoted, that means he was right after all. This guy is a lying scumbag like Akira. Suddenly, he looked back and saw many magic swords surrounding him. Guki muttered through clenched teeth that it was a curse. Alice shouted, using her ability, that they should stop. He should give up. He clicked his tongue in irritation and left the room. She asked if he was okay. She was ashamed that this had happened. Guki was one of the weakest S-rank adventurers, which made him have an inferiority complex. He was desperate to maintain his position. He should forgive his behavior. The protagonist said that there would be no problem. Alice asked with a smile, was he serious? The protagonist said that everything was fine. She shouted happily, that was his new skill, crafting, right? Eru had told her a lot about this ability. MC looked at Eru, who pretended to be innocent. Then she said with a smile that she was asking for his forgiveness. She had told Alice everything in secret. Aki said that she had promised not to tell. Alice said that he shouldn't be angry with her. The protagonist sighed heavily, and then the CEO drew attention to himself with a short cough. He asked if he was going to share the information about the hidden class. The protagonist remarked that he wouldn't talk about it. The CEO asked if he even got paid for it. The MC said that he wasn't interested. Aki thought that for many adventurers, it would only be a hindrance. Some, like Guki, would suffer greatly if there were more like him. Besides, such information would be useless to most. He said that he was sorry to hear that. Alice asked if this was the end of their meeting. The CEO said that they were done. Everyone could go their separate ways. The employees said, bowing, that they were grateful for his time. Then she said with a smile, turning to Aki, that she had some business with him. She wanted him to meet someone. He would be surprised by this. The protagonist looked at her with a puzzled look. After a while, Alice said that this girl was looking forward to meeting him. The protagonist saw her and asked in surprise, was it really her? After a while, they were greeted at the restaurant. The administrator clarified they booked a table for 2, right? People said with admiration that this is the healer with infinite regeneration and next to her. Suddenly, Niami sadly apologized for inviting him so suddenly. He probably feels uncomfortable. The protagonist answered with a smile that everything is fine. He is just surprised that she has become so famous. Some time ago, MC clarified, she is Niami, right? She smiled happily and exclaimed that it is so. They have not seen each other for a long time. Alice raised her hand and clarified that when she united Niami with a suitable group, she grew amazingly, and here she is. Niami raised her fists and said that she has advanced to level 15. Suddenly, Eru put her hands on Aki's shoulder and yelled, he knows the pioneer healer? How so? Niami became embarrassed remembering their meeting and replied that it was a long story. Eru barked, "What does that mean?" Alice laughed happily and noticed that Naomi was now the center of attention. The protagonist put his hand to his chin and clarified, "Is that so?" Naomi, smiling and looking down, said that it was all thanks to meeting Mr. Aki. She awkwardly tried to say something, and Alice clarified that Naomi wanted to thank the protagonist. Naomi agreed and, closing her eyes, yelled, "Maybe they could have dinner together?" MC was very surprised and thought that it was unexpected. Alice crossed her arms, looked at him and said, "Delicious food. A beautiful girl. There's no point in refusing." Naomi is really grateful to him. Aki thought for a moment and agreed, saying that they would go. Naomi happily crossed her arms and yelled. Alice picked up the phone and exclaimed that everything was decided. The rest could be left to her. She had already arranged everything. Naomi asked, "Is it really already?" Naomi is currently pointing at the menu. The protagonist smiles as he looks at her and notices that she has changed and is much brighter. Naomi replies that it is all thanks to him. Ms. Alice recommended her to a party with a necromancer. If it weren't for MC, she would have remained the same as before. Naomi recalled her past defeats and added that ever since she mastered soul healing, everything has changed for her and those around her. Aki, resting his cheek on his hand, asked, "Is it really soul healing?" He thought that a healer couldn't learn this spell without a necromancer in the party. At low levels, it is a very important skill for support. In a world in 20 years, this team will be standard. But in this world, Naomi has become a pioneer. She closed her eyes and folded her hands and said that she can now be useful to her party and society. People who are in the same position that Naomi was once in now see hope. Besides, the healer profession has become popular now. The protagonist noted that this is good. More healers means higher survival rates. She learned a very good skill. Naomi enthusiastically agreed with him. The MC thought that she looked happy. He extended his hand to the food and said that it looks like everything is ready. You can eat. Naomi agreed and wished him bon appetit. She ate the pasta and exclaimed that it was delicious. Aki chewed the food and put his hand on the table. Naomi worriedly asked if he didn't like it. The protagonist smiled and replied that on the contrary, it was very tasty. He just thinks that his sister would like it too. He is in the hospital because of a magical vortex. Naomi thought for a moment and said that she thought healing magic had great potential. When she gets stronger, she might be able to cure his sister. Naomi confidently put her hand on his hand and added that if she could help with anything, he could just say so. She wanted to repay him for MC helping her find herself. Aki happily thanked her and replied that when the time came, he would definitely contact her. Naomi suddenly became very embarrassed and stuttered that she would like to go with him. The protagonist sternly interrupted her and agreed. Naomi yelled, "What does this mean?" MC clarified, "Does she want to go right now, after some time in the pool?" Naomi, happily floating in the water, clarified that she did not expect that they would be able to use the pool on the hotel roof. Alice has great opportunities. Aki, swimming nearby, noted that sometimes you really need to rest. Naomi sadly thought that she meant something else. Suddenly, she stood up in the water and turning to the gentleman asked, "Does he have anyone he loves?" MC thoughtfully scratched his head and remembered his sister. He didn't confirm it and clarified, and why would he need it anyway? Naomi exclaimed that it was very good. Aki asked in confusion what happened. Naomi became embarrassed and put her hands to her cheeks and screamed that nothing special. She picked up the ball and asked him to look at it. She noted that since they were in the pool, they could have fun. Naomi threw him the ball and asked him to catch it. The protagonist quickly bent down and caught the ball with his hand. Suddenly, he fell into the water and Naomi tensed up when she saw it. She instantly raised her hands and laughed. Suddenly, MC saw Naomi's leg in the water and grabbed it with his hand. He quickly pulled her into the water and Naomi closed her eyes and held her breath. They instantly emerged from the water. Aki put his hand on the wall behind Naomi and looked into her eyes. She blushed deeply when she looked at him. The protagonist asked if she wanted to see something. Naomi asked in a stupor, "What?" Suddenly, MC jumped into the water and yelled that among the adventurers, he was nicknamed Tuna. Aki asked to watch him swim. The guy looked at the swimming protagonist and thought that it was a stupid sight. Naomi put her hands to her reddened cheeks and said that it was surprising. The guy, hearing this, was very surprised and thought that they were an odd couple. After some time, Eru, not having gotten enough sleep, yawned with her mouth wide open. Naomi, the protagonist, and Eru gathered in the Adventurers Bureau in the lobby in the meeting room at 6:30. Alice happily clapped her hands and exclaimed that a new team had been formed. She congratulated them with a smile. Eru clarified, and for this they got up so early? Suddenly, Alice said that now the three of them have to clear the B-rank dungeon, the Cursed Tomb. If they succeed, she will invite them to her clan, Soror. To the S-rank clan, Carnelian Rage. The adventurers said with admiration that this couldn't be. Alice agreed and noted that it was not that easy to get into them. What would they say? Would they agree to this? The adventurers clarified. Was this some kind of initiation rite? Alice confirmed this, and the comrades confidently exclaimed that they could handle it. Alice noted with a smile that this was good. MC thought that even in the future, Carnelian Rage was one of the coolest S-rank clans. However, by the time of his rollback, it had already disappeared. Aki remembered hearing about this on the news back then. I wonder why this happened. Eru asked, is he thinking about his own thoughts again? Doesn't the protagonist understand what an honor this is? Especially for a low-ranking adventurer like MC. The system window notifies that Aki is a C-rank master, Niami is a B-rank healer, and Eru is an A-rank archer. The protagonist barked in shock. Is he the lowest ranked? Eru asked if it had just dawned on him. Alice said that it was nothing special, that he would catch up in time. Eru asked if she would have to protect him again. Alice smiled and put her hand on her head, confirming this and saying that Eru's entry depended on it. The adventurer raised her fists in admiration and exclaimed that she would do everything possible. Niami thought that she had thought that Eru was already in the clan. Alice raised her hand and announced that their test would be tomorrow. Everyone is free for today. She headed for the exit and wished them luck. Alice asked them to prepare for it properly, and she would go home and do her own thing. Eru angrily asked where she was going. Suddenly the protagonist grabbed her by the hood and Eru screamed. MC noted that they needed to prepare for tomorrow. Eru angrily ordered him to prepare himself. Aki is the newbie here, not her. The protagonist replied that they needed training, and Eru asked in surprise what that meant. MC smiled and let her go, asked her not to worry because he had already thought of everything. Niami tensely clenched her hand into a fist. After some time in the C-rank dungeon, the ancient forest of 6 legs. Eru walking through the forest said that she could not believe that they were going to the dungeon on their day off. She looked tensely at Niami and asked what she was doing here. Niami sadly apologized. Eru clarified that it was for the sake of the healer. She knew, right? Aki agreed and said that he was sure the raid would be useful for her. In addition, it would give them experience of interaction. Niami thought sadly that she wanted to be with the protagonist so much. She wanted him to count on her. Niami looked at Eru with irritation and thought that she would not lose to her. Eru calmly picked up the package and asked the healer to just keep up and stay close. Suddenly, MC put his finger to his mouth and asked him to be quiet. He quietly said that it was Centaur. The comrades quietly asked, "Is this what they were looking for?" Aki agreed and remarked that it was good that they came across her so soon. The protagonist smiled and thought, is she resting? They were very lucky. The system window notifies that a quest is available. You need to heal a monster. MC was surprised to think that something was strange again. He put his hand to his chin and thought for a while and asked Niami to come closer. Aki pointed at Centaur and asked her to be careful. Niami agreed and walked through the grass. Suddenly, a grasshopper jumped towards Centaur. Eru got really scared and ordered everyone to lie down. She quickly covered her comrades from the flying powerful beam of mana. Suddenly, an arrow passed through a tree, and the adventurers looked at it in fear. Centaur pulled the arrow in her bow with great rage. The protagonist put his hand on Niami's back and noticed that the opponent shot without delay. An amazing reaction. They almost got caught. Niami clarified, "Centaurs are usually non-aggressive, aren't they?" MC said that something was wrong. Suddenly, Centaur was about to shoot, but Aki raised his hand and asked her to stop. He yelled that they didn't want to hurt her. Centaur let out a tired breath and fell to the ground. Niami noted that the enemy seemed to be unwell. The protagonist asked Eru to listen carefully and asked if she could hear anything. Eru looked away seriously and disagreed. The archer asked, what should she have heard? Suddenly, a wound appeared in Eru's leg and she fell to the ground. Her comrades called out to her and asked her to be careful. Centaur was weakened by poison. Suddenly, Eru looked at the huge C-rank Venonsect with great fear. Aki determinedly created the demonic sword Muramasa in his hand. He quickly swung the weapon, protecting Eru. Venonsect rose upward with great speed. MC raised his hand and pointed the sword towards the insect. Suddenly, dark smoke appeared, and Aki covered his mouth with his hand, thinking that things were bad. He yelled that it was poisonous pollen and ordered them to run behind a tree. The protagonist thought that the opponents were quite strong, they shouldn't drag it out. Suddenly, he noticed Eru in the distance. She was sitting on the ground, shaking with purple veins appearing on her leg. Several insects were hovering over her. MC quickly created a thunderblade and raised it and spread lightning around, hitting the opponents. He covered his mouth with his hand and called out to Eru and asked if she could go. Eru apologized and said that she was too careless. Suddenly, she looked at her hands with great admiration. Niami spread mana streams from her staff and used healing and purification magic. The comrades stood surrounded by light mana from the healer's ability. Aki clarified, was this group magic? Niami disagreed and clarified that she cast the effect on each of them individually. Unfortunately, she did not have a spell to resist poison. She had to cast purification over and over again. The protagonist tensed up and thought that the magic was being used continuously to minimize the incessant effects of the poisonous pollen. The caster can't move during this. They need to think of something before Naomi runs out of mana. MC looked at Venonsect and turned to the archer and asked if she could knock down the enemy. He explained that Venonsect is a queen. She poisons her victims with pollen, after which she sends her subordinates. They in turn roll the person into a meatball and carry him to the nest. Eru screamed with great fear that this is very unpleasant. MC confidently raised his weapon and said that he will deal with the little ones. He spread lightning around and screamed that he relies on her. Eru resolutely agreed with him. Several insects landed on the ground surrounded by lightning, leaving a dark trail of smoke behind them. Eru fired her bow at the queen and ordered her to descend. Arrows pierced Venonsect's wings and she looked at the archer with fury. Eru thought that the queen is durable. It will be difficult to pierce her. But she needs to hurry. Suddenly Venonsect flew towards Eru with its stinger pointing downwards. The queen attacked the archer and Eru fell to the ground, but suddenly Centaur appeared behind her. Aki called out to her and Eru screamed that she was okay. The archer quickly drew her arrow. She closed her eyes from the bright light coming from Venonsect's sting. Suddenly Centaur grabbed Eru's hand. A troll greatsword appeared in front of the queen's face. Eru resolutely drew her arrow and thanked Centaur for her help. She shot and the arrow, shrouded in mana, pierced Venonsect's head. The queen bent down and Aki appeared behind her. He used the Thunderblade skill enhancement and cut off Venonsect's head with great force. Naomi instantly fell to the ground and exhaled heavily. Suddenly Eru asked her to come over. She worriedly said that Centaur needed help. The protagonist raised his hand and said that if it was not too much trouble, could she? She confidently agreed, interrupting him. Naomi enveloped the staff in mana and healed Centaur. The system window notifies that the task is completed. MC has access to a reward, the Adventurer's Key. Centaur thanked Eru and handed her her bow. Centaur looked at the archer with a smile and headed into the forest. Eru asked in confusion, "Centaur wants to give this to her?" Suddenly, Aki called out to Eru and pointed at the bow, noting that it was one of the best bows in these dimensions. Eru was very surprised and screamed. "What does this mean?" The protagonist said that he told her that he would help her with archery skills. So, centaurs create their bows by combining them with their own magical power. These bows are significantly superior to those made by humans and are very difficult to obtain. So MC was going to steal it. Eru yelled that it was wild. She looked at the bow with a smile and noted that it was only when you touched it that you realized how good it was. Naomi happily asked, "Did Eru get the bow from Centaur?" It was very good and she was happy for Eru. The archer said sheepishly that she was slightly offended when she saw Naomi. But now, Eru was glad that Naomi was there. The healer maintained the spell for a long time. It was amazing. Naomi cried with happiness and laughed that she was very happy. Eru asked in confusion why the healer was crying. "Is everything okay?" The protagonist thought that he had dragged them into this, but thanks to their efforts, they achieved a lot. Suddenly, MC noticed an arrow in the tree that pierced an insect. Aki was surprised and wondered, did Centaur really not plan to attack them from the beginning? He instantly smiled, realizing this. The next day at the Adventurers Bureau, Alice confidently raised her finger and exclaimed that from now on, the test for joining the Carnelian Rage begins. The comrades decisively shouted that they could finally begin. Alice noted that they could handle it and wished them good luck. She happily waved her hand goodbye. Naomi confidently turned to her comrades and suggested that they give it their all. The protagonist looked at her and replied that there was no need to worry so much. Eru smilingly agreed with him. She clarified that whoever comes against them, she will kill them with her cool bow. Eru asked them to rely on her. After some time, in the B-rank dungeon, an underground tomb of sinister spirits, Eru tensed up greatly upon seeing the graves. Suddenly, a bat flew over their heads and screamed. MC clarified, "Is everything okay?" Eru stutteringly confirmed it. Aki wondered where her previous mood had gone. He noted that the underground tomb of sinister spirits, as they see it, is a place where all sorts of undead gather. Physical attacks usually don't work against ghosts, so it won't be easy. Eru screamed in fear that she didn't know that, and anyway, it's difficult for him. It scares her. Eru confidently raised her hand and added that, in the end, they are just monsters, and they are not in a horror movie, so they just need to defeat them. Naomi clarified with a smile, "Isn't it that scary?" Suddenly, Eru exclaimed with great fear that it is not scary at all. But if Naomi is afraid, she can take her hand. The healer noted with a smile that she has already gotten used to it. The protagonist thought that it became a little noisy. Suddenly, the ground began to break. The comrades looked in fear at the monsters crawling out of the ground and screamed, "What is this?" C-rank monsters, zombie goblins, crawled out of the ground. Eru confidently exclaimed that she can handle the zombies. Naomi yelled resolutely that she would help. Eru suddenly noticed a dark silhouette near the graves. She pointed her finger at the Banshee and yelled that there was someone there. MC sternly said that now was not the time for her. He quickly raised his hand and created Excalibur. Aki cut the zombies with great power, leaving a trace of mana behind the weapon. He confidently stands surrounded by falling enemy body parts. Miami joyfully exclaimed that this is a sacred blade. Eru looked at the graves with great fear and yelled that the Banshee was gone. MC picked up the mana-covered weapon and clarified that the Master's strength is in the ability to choose a weapon with suitable properties. However, the more powerful the characteristics, the more mana is spent. Suddenly, the mana changed color, and the mana ball rose up. C-rank Soul Eater monsters sucked mana from zombies. Aki calmly said that against monsters that do not have a physical form, they of course have less chance. Eru screamed in fear that this couldn't be happening. She also uses physical attacks. They are definitely finished. Eru asked the protagonist to do something and clarified, "He can do it, right?" MC apologized and replied that he is powerless here. Suddenly, Miami raised her staff and spread mana to the sides. The Soul Eaters covered their faces with their hands from the bright light. The mana streams from Miami's staff quickly suck in the Soul Eaters. She confidently swung her staff and used Soul Healing. The Soul Eaters instantly disappeared and Eru exclaimed that it was amazing. A healer who kills monsters? How did she do that? Miami said with a smile that Soul Healing uses the souls of the dead as a catalyst and turns them into a powerful healing spell. The excess healing is converted and increases the target's mana. She learned this skill from Aki. Eru noted that this is why she's called a pioneer. Miami is really cool. Aki, the protagonist, smiled and thought that the amount of healing and mana increase exceeded all expectations. Miami seems to be developing faster than he thought. In that case, even if she interferes, they will somehow. Suddenly, MC heard a scream and turned his head to the side. Eru, surrounded by monsters, yelled, "Aren't there too many of them?" They needed to get out of the encirclement. Eru worriedly asked if the protagonist knew the way. MC replied that he thought he had been here before. Aki quickly ran towards the wall. Eru asked him to stop and yelled that this was a dead end. The protagonist pressed his hands to the wall and thought that there should be a passage here. Apparently, it had not been created yet. He decisively turned his head to the side and yelled that they would have to fight. Eru looked at the approaching monsters and yelled that there were too many of them. Suddenly, Miami heard something and asked, "Was that singing?" The Banshee sang for the lost soul to sleep and rest in peace. Eru pointed at it with great fear and yelled that it was the one they had seen before. MC looked at it and thought it was the Banshee. He did not expect to meet her so close to the entrance. Aki knows little about her, but even S-rank adventurers can die at her hands if they are not careful. MC covered his ears with his hands and ordered everyone to cover their ears because her attacks are unpredictable. Miami asked in surprise, "What is this?" The Banshee sang for everyone to close their eyes and find peace, and suddenly the goblin fell to the ground. The Banshee sang for them to go to their mother's house and sleep. She extended her hand towards her comrades and continued to let them be in the embrace of eternal nights and sleep. Suddenly, mana enveloped the adventurers' bodies. The Banshee extended her hand forward, and the comrades flew to the side and fell to the floor. Suddenly, Eru looked back and saw her hand in the wall. She screamed that they passed through walls. How is this even possible? Aki tensed up and thought that he couldn't even believe that such abilities exist. What is Banshee up to? Suddenly, the comrades fell to the floor behind the wall and screamed in pain. The protagonist thought that this was a secret room. Suddenly, Banshee passed through the wall and Eru screamed in fear. Banshee put her hand to her chest and MC resolutely raised his sword. He noted that she did not seem to be hostile. However, why did she bring them here? Banshee extended her hand to Naomi and asked for help. Eru screamed in fear that the enemy had spoken. Banshee created a ball of mana and asked to release the souls. A figure of the boss appeared in the mana streams. Aki looked at it and exclaimed that it was a soul stealer, an A-rank monster. The boss of this dungeon. Eru exclaimed tensely that he was very scary. Naomi asked with interest, "What does it mean to release souls?" The protagonist answered that the soul stealer absorbs the souls of the deceased and uses them as magical power. For him, the dead are a source of magic, which gives him enormous power. MC does not know why, but Banshee wants to cut off this flow of magical power. And for this, you will need Naomi's skill. Soul Healing. The system window notifies that Soul Healing is magic that converts the souls of the dead into a powerful healing spell. If there is excess, the excess healing is converted into mana. Naomi said with confusion that with the help of her skill. Suddenly, Aki looked at Banshee and asked, he understood her correctly, right? Banshee tilted her head to the side. Eru asked how the protagonist knows so much. He is here for the first time, isn't he? MC closed his eyes and answered that it was a secret. Suddenly, Banshee walked towards the wall and extended her hand towards it. Suddenly, a hole appeared in the wall and Banshee pointed at it. Aki said that the boss was ahead and ordered to go. After some time, the comrades walk along the corridor. They came out into the room and looked at the flying souls. The soul stealer sits on the throne among the graves. He instantly opened his mouth and screamed, cutting through the air. Eru covered her face with her hand from the flow of wind and exclaimed that this is a rank. MC raised his weapon and clarified that if they acted according to plan, everything would be fine. He ordered them to move forward and the comrades agreed. Niami closed her eyes and raised her staff. The boss instantly raised his lantern and spread mana to the sides. Souls quickly flew towards the comrades. Eru irritably asked him to wait. Aki wondered why the boss had such a huge area attack. This was bad, because at this rate they would not last long. Suddenly, a shield appeared around the comrades and the souls hit it. Banshee raised her hand and used the curtain of souls. The protagonist looked at her in surprise and Eru asked, "Is she helping them?" Banshee calmly turned her head to the side and looked at the adventurers. The soul stealer raised his lantern and sent streams of mana towards the enemies. Souls instantly headed towards the lantern and the shield disappeared. MC noted that this lantern is the source of the boss's magic. If they do not destroy it, the attacks will be endless. Banshee folded her hands around the mana ball. Niami said that the spell was complete and apologized for the wait. She confidently sent mana from the staff and exclaimed that they would destroy him. Niami used soul healing and Banshee looked at her in surprise. Souls quickly began to fly out of the lantern. Niami pointed the staff towards her comrades and they joyfully exclaimed that this was amazing. Eru confidently drew an arrow and yelled that now they definitely will not lose. She shot a fire arrow at the enemy. The soul stealer raised the lantern and created a curtain of souls. Suddenly, a fire arrow pierced the curtain and passed through the boss. Eru exclaimed that this is powerful. This bow is simply amazing. She confidently drew an arrow shrouded in fire and called the boss damned. The soul stealer threw a chain in their direction and yelled that all the souls belonged to him. Eru looked in surprise at the chain shrouded her hand. The boss pulled the chain and Eru screamed while dragging herself along the ground. The boss grabbed her hair with his hand and she screamed. Niami ran anxiously and called out to Eru. Suddenly, Aki cut off the boss's hand and noticed that the soul thief forgot about someone. The boss raised his hand with blood spurting out and screamed in pain. The protagonist noticed that the power was overflowing him. He raised the sword shrouded in mana with a confident smile and ordered the boss to prepare to see his skill. The soul thief looked at the hand shrouded in holy power and screamed. The power spread throughout the soul thief's entire body. Aki thought that the holy power of the attribute was still preserved and spreading. He never thought that the effect would be so good. The protagonist ran quickly with a terrifying aura in his eyes and thought that it was time to finish what he started. Suddenly, the holy power disappeared and souls appeared in front of the boss. MC was very surprised to see that the opponent's hand began to recover. The boss looked sternly at his mana-shrouded hand. Aki thought his hand had been restored. Many souls flew towards the protagonist and explosions thundered. The comrades covered their ears with their hands in fear from the loud sounds. The soul stealer stands surrounded by smoke and souls, raising his hands to the sides. He laughed terrifyingly. Suddenly, MC, smiling, noted that this was funny. Having fired so many projectiles, the boss did not hit with a single one. The soul stealer quickly raised his hand, directing the souls to the side, but Niami raised her staff and used soul healing. Aki decisively raised his weapon and clarified that Niami was simply controlling the boss. He swung his sword with great power and cut off the soul stealer's head. The comrades smiled happily and screamed. The boss's body rose up and dissipated, and his lantern fell to the floor. The protagonist smashed the lantern with his sword, and many souls were freed. Niami noted that these were captured souls. Banshee calmly gathered the souls into a light ball. Suddenly, the lantern sparkled brightly and a creature appeared in it. Banshee ran towards it with great joy. She hugged the creature, crying with happiness. MC looked at it in surprise. Banshee smiled and thanked them. She quickly disappeared, leaving behind smoke and light. Eru asked what kind of monster she was anyway. Niami replied that she didn't know. Suddenly she laughed, covering her mouth with her hand. Niami noticed that it was the first time a monster had thanked her. The protagonist smiled and replied that it was true. He suggested that they go home. The next day at the Adventurers Bureau, Alice congratulated them on completing the dungeon. She raised her finger with a smile and said that they were now officially accepted into the Carnelian Rage. The adventurers raised their hands with great joy and shouted that they were very happy. Alice asked if MC had arrived yet. They would wait for him and go celebrate. Suddenly, the journalist apologized and said that she accidentally overheard. "So Eru is a new member of Carnelian Rage?" Eru asked, "What's going on?" The journalists yelled that the adventurers had passed the Cursed Catacombs dungeon, which even S-rank adventurers have difficulty with. The internet is full of talk about their tandem with the Pioneer Healer. How did they manage to do it? Passing the test with a C-rank adventurer wasn't easy, was it? What were their strategies? Aki suddenly appeared. He asked with confusion what was going on. Alice replied that the journalists had come to hear about their success. Eru quickly pointed her finger at the protagonist and exclaimed that thanks to him, they had passed the dungeon. The journalist clarified, who was he? The comrade replied that it was a classless C rank. The journalist asked, so this is the same boy who helps everyone C rank? Passing with a low-level adventurer is not easy. She is sure that this could not have happened without their sensitive guidance. Eru waved her hands in irritation and screamed, how many times do they have to tell them that it was MC who was leading them? Suddenly, the phone in Aki's pocket rang. He put the phone to his ear. The protagonist was instantly very scared, and Alice asked what happened. He dropped the phone on the floor and quickly ran to the exit. At the same time, MC was quickly running down the street, breathing heavily. He clenched his teeth in rage and thought that it was Natsu. After some time, the doctor exclaimed that they needed to check the vital signs. Blood pressure and pulse dropped 30% below normal. The doctor ordered to continue administering the drug. The doctors standing next to Natsu screamed that help was needed. At the same time, Aki quickly ran to the nurse's room. The doctor stopped him and asked him to wait outside. The protagonist angrily asked to let him through. The doctor screamed that MC should not interfere with the doctors. He asked to understand him. Suddenly, the door to the ward closed. Aki sat down on the sofa and covered his face with his hands. He wondered if the symptoms had really progressed to this extent, and there was still no cure. Alice's assistant turned to the protagonist and MC raised his head. The assistant handed him the phone and asked him to take it. Aki asked in surprise, was this his phone? He looked at the screen and saw that someone was calling him. The assistant raised his hand and clarified that the protagonist had better look outside. MC, very confused, put the phone to his ear. Alice said into the phone that she found out about his sister's condition. He dropped his phone, and she accidentally read it. Aki wondered what that noise was. He asked in confusion, what was going on? The assistant pointed to the window, and the protagonist looked out of it. A helicopter was flying above the hospital. Alice, smiling, said into the phone that she decided to dedicate the protagonist to her comrades. She confidently stood on the roof of the hospital with her comrades. Alice picked up the watch with a determined grin and said that MC is now part of Carnelian Rage. After a while, the door to Natsu's ward opened. The doctors looked at the people in surprise and asked what was going on. The people replied that the cavalry had arrived. The doctors yelled in amazement that this was very unexpected. Could this really be a magical medical organization? Ever since magic appeared in the world, this medical organization has been gaining strength. With their technology, they have shown the world diseases caused by magic that were previously untreatable. They have saved many lives. They are the best specialists who study magical diseases. The doctors tensed up and asked for help. The doctors announced that the diagnosis was a magical vortex and the severity level was 3. Will they resort to an operation to absorb magic? After a while, the protagonist looked at the doctors and asked where they suddenly appeared from. Alice smiled and asked to trust them, and everything will be fine. She asked MC not to worry. Aki looked down with concern and did not answer. After some time, the doctor opened the door. The protagonist quickly approached him and asked how she was. The doctor replied that her condition had stabilized and Natsu was on the mend. However, the disease was progressing rapidly and it was unknown when the next attack would occur. MC tensed up and thanked the doctors. The doctor raised his hand and said that Alice had called them here. If anyone needed to be thanked, it was her. Alice put her hand on her chest and asked Aki not to bother because she was happy to help. Aki asked if she helped all her comrades like that. Alice smiled and tilted her head down and replied that she did. She put her hand on his shoulder and, coming closer, added that she was doubly glad to help him. The protagonist became embarrassed. Alice laughed and noted that MC had finally stopped being serious. Aki sternly said that he was grateful to her and thanked Alice. He moved to the side and thought for a bit. The protagonist turned to Alice and asked if there was one more thing he could ask her for. MC clarified that it was for Natsu. He confidently clenched his fists and said that he would not remain in debt. Alice was very surprised and noted that Aki asked her for help. She smiled and put her hand on her chest and added that it was an honor for her. What should be done? The protagonist thought that Alice had proven with her actions that she could be trusted. Her sincerity and determination were genuine. He might have to reveal part of the secret, but he trusted her. The protagonist said that he knew a way to cure the magical vortex. This required the power of the alchemist class. Does she have connections among such people? Alice thought, putting her hand to her chin, and replied that she had not heard of such a class. MC tensed up and thought that apparently it did not exist in this era. It seemed that they had no other choice but to go to the world of elves again. Alice clarified that this class was the key to solving the problem. Aki confirmed this and added that the moonstone is the only material that can be turned into a cure for the magic vortex. Alice seriously noted that she had heard of it, but did not know that it could be used like this. She turned around and said that she understood that it had many secrets. But doesn't MC want to tell more about everything? Although it is not necessary. Alice smiled confidently and raised her hand, exclaimed that she still will not leave him in trouble. She asked him to listen and said that she thought she saw the person who changed the properties of the magic stone. Aki was very surprised, and Alice added that she did not know if this was the right power. But maybe it is worth trying to meet him? The protagonist agreed, and Alice said that then it was decided. She asked him to be prepared that the road would not be easy. Serious trials may await him ahead. After some time, a car quickly drove along the road. It stopped and Tyra got out of the car. Suddenly, journalists appeared and they quickly ran and called out to the doctor. The journalists surrounded him and exclaimed that they said that Tyra had succeeded again in developing a new medicine. Tyra confirmed this with a smile and noted that it was not difficult at all. The journalists shouted that the doctor was creating new medicines one after another. Did he have some kind of secret method? Tyra grinned and adjusted his glasses and replied that it was probably talent. He headed to the entrance of the building and asked for forgiveness and said that he had a lot to do. The security stopped the journalists. They called out to the doctor and asked for one more minute. After a while, Tyra, confidently walking down the corridor, thought that it was talent. It was a gift received from God. The assistant opened the door and said that the reward for developing the medicine was on the table. The doctor raised his hand and thanked him. Tyra sat on the table and thought how rich he was. He opened the box with the reward. The doctor took out a bill and, pressing it to his face, exclaimed that life was a success. He raised his hand with a smile and yelled that his talent was like the philosopher's stone. Suddenly, his phone rang. Tyra pressed the phone to his ear and turned to his dad and asked what happened. Dad clarified, "Does he have free time today?" "There is a person who wants to meet with Tyra." The son, incomprehensibly, noted that this was unexpected and clarified who it was. Dad answered that he did not know and clarified that they say that the person is quite influential. Tyra got angry and sat down on a chair and yelled, "How should this bother him?" Dad said into the phone that it is important for him and his hospital. Can't the son just meet him? Tyra irritably agreed, and Dad added that he will send him information about him. Tyra looked at the phone and clarified who this person was who was able to pressure his father. The phone says that it is Aki, a C-rank adventurer. The doctor sighed and said that he thought there was someone very important there, but it is an ordinary adventurer. After some time, the assistant announced that the doctor had an important guest. Tyra smirked and allowed him to enter. The protagonist entered the room and thanked the doctor for his time. The doctor said that he was pleased to meet him and asked if MC had an urgent matter, it seemed. Tyra waved his hand and said that he was busy, so he asked to get straight to the point. Aki agreed and said that he was looking for an alchemist. He was told that the doctor had the appropriate abilities. If Tyra doesn't understand what he's talking about, then the protagonist thinks he should leave. The doctor asked, so MC used his connections to get to him? He stood up from his chair and added that he didn't know who tipped off Aki, but the protagonist was well aware. His guess was correct. MC was very surprised and asked, so the doctor really did. Tyra interrupted him and agreed and said that he was probably the first alchemist in human history. Aki was very happy and thought that he had finally found it. Tyra asked, so what does the protagonist want him to do for him? MC raised his hand and answered that he needed Tyra to create a cure. The doctor grinned sarcastically and agreed and asked how much Aki was willing to pay him. The protagonist was surprised and Tyra clarified that his talent cost money. Doesn't MC know this? What authority does he have in the field of pharmacology? Aki disagreed and said he didn't know. Suddenly Tyra got angry and yelled, "What does this mean?" The protagonist clarified that he heard that he was a doctor. He apologized and said that he didn't have a large sum of money right now. In return, MC could offer valuable information. He thought that it would be very useful to the doctor. Tyra adjusted his glasses and thought, what does that mean, information? How could this man even dare to say something like that? The doctor said that if MC didn't have money, then the conversation was over. He thought that he would scare Aki a little. Hera smiled and created mana between his finger and added that the protagonist should leave. Suddenly, a portal appeared behind MC, and he quickly turned his head to the side. Unexpectedly, the doctor jumped towards him and raised his leg with the intention of striking. Aki instantly blocked the attack and Tyra yelled, "What is this?" The protagonist quickly struck him back with his hand. The doctor fell onto the table and the money flew everywhere. He barked in confusion. Where did such power come from? It doesn't look like the power of a C-rank adventurer. Tyra gritted his teeth in fear, looking at the protagonist. MC looked at him seriously and asked for help. He said that he really needed Tyra's abilities. The doctor screamed in fear that this would not happen. Why would he help trash like Aki, who can't even pay? How should he care? The protagonist noted that Tyra really seemed to love money. The doctor grinned, catching the bill, and replied that it was true. After all, they are at the forefront of everything. Without them, a person is nothing. MC smiled and pointed his finger at the doctor, saying that in that case, Tyra should help him develop a cure, and he would make it so that the doctor would earn many times more than he had now. Tyra clarified, many times more? Aki confirmed this and replied that he had the power to see the future. The protagonist thought that although this was not entirely true, he could only talk about what was in his future. MC confidently crossed his arms and said that if the doctor helps him, he will make Tyra even richer. The doctor angrily exclaimed so that Aki does not think that he is a fool. The protagonist thought that it is true. Few people would believe such a thing, except perhaps Alice. But he cannot back down now. Tyra looked at the phone in MC's hand and asked what Aki is going to do. The protagonist replied that he wants to dispel his doubts by demonstrating his abilities. The doctor grinned maliciously and clarified, MC wants to predict the weather? Suddenly, Aki showed a phone with a photo and said that this man will soon get into a car accident. He will be arrested for fleeing the scene of an accident. While escaping, he will run over the victim with his car again and receive a severe punishment. Tyra quickly raised his hand and shouted that this is impossible. This man is his acquaintance. He would never do such a thing. What grounds does the protagonist have for assuming so? The MC took the envelope and offered to make a bet. He wrote something on the envelope and handed it to the doctor. Aki clarified that if everything happens as he said, then Tyra should call him. The protagonist smiled, putting his hand to the portal, and asked the doctor to remember that there was a huge amount of money at stake. Tyra looked through the portal at the leaving MC. He crumpled the envelope and called Aki crazy. Tyra calmly threw the envelope in the trash. The next day, a photo of a doctor he knew was shown on TV. The host said that this morning, the former deputy was arrested on suspicion of running over a person and fleeing the scene. It is reported that he hit a person with his car, and then, suddenly moving away, ran over him again and disappeared. Tyra heard this and went into a stupor, holding a toothbrush in his hand. After some time, the protagonist put the phone to his ear and said that he was waiting for him. The doctor yelled that this really happened. What did the MC do? Aki smiled and replied that nothing. He just looked into the future. The protagonist will send the doctor the location and wait for him there. MC swore that this is a source of great income. After some time, the car stopped at a construction site. Tyra got out of the car with confusion and looked at the place where waste from the dungeons is disposed of. Suddenly, Aki noticed that the doctor had arrived. Tyra screamed in rage. Where is his promised great income? This is just a trash can. Waste that comes out of the dungeons is thrown out here. The protagonist clarified that sometimes adventurers bring them with them. Sometimes they themselves erupt from the gate. These are special materials that modern technology cannot process. So they are simply dumped here, not knowing what to do with them. But in 3 years, a method will appear that will be able to convert this waste into biofuel. However, with the doctor's abilities, it will only take 1 year. And then Tyra will be able to monopolize this business. The doctor smiled terrifyingly and noted that he could not be fooled. MC also wants a share, right? Tyra quickly raised his hand, emitting lightning from it, and yelled, Aki thinks that he is a complete fool. He wanted to fool him? The trash merged into a golem at great speed, and the doctor used decomposition and synthesis. He yelled that the protagonist decided to humiliate him. Tyra roared that he would not forgive this, and the golem raised his fist. He dealt a powerful blow to the ground, breaking it, but MC managed to jump back from the attack. Aki, sliding on the ground, thought that the doctor really was an alchemist. So it's all true. The protagonist raised his hand and created the enchanted sword Azoth. He swung the weapon and destroyed the golem. Tyra covered his face with his hands from the falling debris. He looked down in confusion and asked where the golem went. The doctor turned his head to the side with fury and yelled, So MC can create too? Suddenly, Tyra turned around and looked at the many flying blades. He put his hands on the ground and used transformation. Instantly, a wall of earth appeared in front of him. The blades pierced the wall and it collapsed. The doctor was very scared looking at the flying weapons. Blade instantly stopped in front of his face. Aki said that he was not lying, and he really needed his help. The protagonist was not asking to do it for free, and Tyra heard his conditions. Didn't the doctor need money? Tyra smiled ominously and replied that it was true. Money rules the world. Every yen is worth its efforts. The doctor squeezed the dirt in his hand with a terrifying look and asked, Doesn't MC think so? Aki remained silent, and Tyra got up from the ground and agreed. The doctor confidently raised his hand and added that he would create the potion that Aki was talking about. Aki said with a calm expression that he was willing to help him. Tyra wiped his hand with a handkerchief with a small smile and said that he could remain calm even after getting dirty with some trash. He still didn't completely trust him and thought that this guy's ability to see the future was still questionable. However, his skill, which he had never seen before, was able to defeat him, an A-rank adventurer. He was clearly not an ordinary person. He adjusted his glasses and said that his potential had caught his attention. However, he still felt that it was strange. Will these piles of trash really be able to be turned into biofuel? The protagonist stood next to him and said that it was true. Tyra looked at something on his phone and said that the cost was about the same at the moment. In fact, the profit depends on how many liters they can produce. Monopolizing all production before the technology is even developed, he sees that it really has a good prospect. If it's true, it will be grand. He heard him, he was taking all of this for himself only. They went together, and MC said that he didn't have the technology or any funding. This knowledge was really useful for those who knew how to use this information. He said that it made sense. With such foresight into the future that he had, he could start his own business in the future. It's such a waste. Even this medicine that he would prepare for him, I wonder what he had seen in the future already? He hoped that he would let him have the honor of witnessing it. Aki shook his hand, agreed, and said that he would contact him again later. He thought that this way all the pieces of the puzzle were coming together. Natsu should wait a little longer. The next day at Central University City of Tokyo General Research Building. In Konzaki's personal lab, Tyra said with a small smile, "Welcome to his lab." The protagonist went inside, thanked him, and Alice came in behind him and said that she was here too. He walked up to her with a happy expression and said it was an honor to see her in his lab. She said it was an honor for her too. He asked if that was perhaps the reason he came to him too. Even though he didn't finish his question, she understood and agreed and said it was through her connections. MC walked up to the table and poured out some crystals from a small bag and said that they were ingredients for a cure. They were called moon magic stones. Tyra picked up one of these stones and began to examine it and said that it was the first time he saw it. He could feel strong magic coming from this stone. It was as beautiful as a doll. Aki said that these stones were not currently awakened. He wanted him to awaken it with his alchemical power. He held the stone in his hand and said that he was speaking too abstractly. He would try, but what were their unactivated effects? Could he at least tell him that? He said that it was meant to cure mana shock. Tyra was very surprised by this and asked loudly, "Is this a special medicine?" He does understand that there has been no cure for mana shock until now, right? If it was used for psychotherapy nonsense, it wouldn't help him at all. The main character said that he was telling the truth. The magic contained in these stones can be used to neutralize the mana blockage from mana shock. Alice asked, "Then they can finally cure this disease with this, right?" He agreed and said that he asks you to believe him. He is not mistaken. Tyra was surprised by this, began to secretly send a message to someone and thought with a sly smile that this guy is actually a hidden treasure. After that, he put the phone in his pocket and asked what property he would need to change. MC looked at him and said that the heat property needs to be changed. During this, he began to prepare to use his ability and said that he is ready to begin. With his ability, he lifted the rock into the air and started doing what he was told, and because of that, Alice started to freeze. He continued using his ability and said that he was curious about what it would look like. He noticed that nothing was changing and asked if the temperature was not enough. He was going to condense it and increase the thermal efficiency. He noticed the changes and said that the reaction had changed. He could see that this outer shell was dissipating the heat. Then he just needed to emit this core. Now he could see it and rearrange it properly. With this, he would be able to finish. He was able to get the core out and it was emitting a bright light, and he said that it was complete. He showed it to the others and asked if this would be enough. Aki was very happy with his success and agreed and said that this was it and there were no problems at all. It had originally taken many years to complete this cure. He remembered what had happened to his sister and said that with this, however, he could cure her. He grabbed his hand with a very happy expression and said loudly that thanks to him, he was able to save his little sister. He continued to thank him for this, and Alice watched them from the side and thought that she couldn't believe that he could be so expressive. His sister was really important to him. She congratulated him and said that she was so proud to witness such a historic moment. However, they should pay close attention to this achievement. It will cause a huge stir in the world. The protagonist agreed and said that if possible, he would like to avoid making a public statement. Tyra was very surprised by this and asked loudly what he just said. Now is the best time to do it, right? He does realize that this is a cure for a disease that threatens all of humanity, right? His sister is not the only person who is suffering because of this. Sick people in Japan, or rather, even all over the world, also need this medicine. Alice said that he has the ability to foresee the future. He doesn't want the world to know about his power, right? At that moment, several people ran into the room and said that there were a lot of people outside. Tyra went to the window and said with a smile that if that was the case, then he should let him stand in his place. At the same time, A huge number of journalists gathered near the lab and loudly asked, "The doctor is here? Isn't that so? Is it true that they found a cure for mana shock?" Alice asked what all this meant. Tyra apologized to her and said that it was just his promise. After all, he offered him a way to make a large sum of money. She was surprised by this. MC agreed and said that he really promised him that. However, he doesn't have much time. He can't waste his time entertaining the media and the whole world. He needs to focus on treating his sister, so he asks not to mention anything about them. She was still surprised by this, but was still able to understand him. Tyra called his name with a smile and said that he doesn't need to worry, he will keep everything that concerns him a secret. He could leave the media's attention on him. Immediately after that, he walked out of his lab, where a lot of journalists were already waiting for him. They all took pictures of him, held out microphones, and loudly asked, "Is it true that his latest development was a cure for mana fever?" He said that the correct term was mana shock. One of the journalists asked, "Every department of magical medicine was working on finding a cure for this disease, but unfortunately for them, his group had already found a cure, right?" Tyra said that they shouldn't talk about it in such a tone. Conquering mana shock was humanity's dream. They just wanted to contribute to humanity's efforts. The journalist was taken aback by this and said that he apologized for his rudeness. He turned away with a sly grin and thought that he had finally outsmarted this magical medics organization. "That's great." He could already smell the money. One of the journalists asked, "So what kind of treatment did he develop?" He was confused by this question and thought that, now that they mentioned it, he forgot to ask it. He started thinking about it and said that the key was the magic stones. There were still many uncertainties, that's why he couldn't tell them the details yet. When everything was completely finished, then he would tell them everything. Alice looked at this through the window and asked if everything would really be okay. After all, he was the one who made this discovery, and the one who should also receive this glory. Aki said that he didn't want such things, let all the glory go to him. The next day, on the news, a journalist said that while the number of patients with this disease continued to increase, the Kanzaki group announced that they had developed a new cure for mana shock. Tyra, acting as the company's representative, made a significant contribution to the mana shock cure. The protagonist was sitting in his sister's hospital room, watching the news when someone walked in. He saw Naomi with Alice and said that he was grateful that they came. Tyra peeked out from behind the door and said that he was here too. The MC pointed to the TV and asked if he shouldn't be on TV right now. He felt embarrassed by this and asked what he was talking about. The press conference was this morning, and it wasn't a live broadcast. He also finished changing the properties of the stones and came here to deliver this. Naomi looked at it in surprise and said that it looked beautiful. He said that they could start the cure. He asked to tell them how to perform this operation. Aki said that he was sorry, but their role here was over. From now on, this is a job for a mage. He called Naomi and said that he would leave this to her. She said that as long as she can help him, she is counting on him. Tyra was indignant at this and asked loudly, "How come they won't need a doctor's hand during the operation? This is nonsense." Alice asked with a small smile, "He is here because he doesn't know how to use these magic stones, right?" He was confused by this, laughed awkwardly and said that he asks her to stop joking like that. There is no way he can stoop so low. He is only here for the sake of people and the world. Aki walked up to Natsu and asked, "She's in a lot of pain, right?" "Everything will be fine, he is here." Placed the case with the crystals next to her and thought that he was here to save her. He began to control the magic stones with his ability and raised it above her. Immediately after that, dark energy began to emerge from her body. He said with a tense look that once the blockage disappears, Natsu will immediately get better. He called Naomi, who was standing next to him. She immediately understood everything and started using healing magic. He continued to use his skill with all his might and thought that he kept using too much mana. That's why he became strong. However, is his level still not enough? He was very surprised because Alice came up to him and started helping him with her magic. She said with a smile that they can't fail now. He thanked her for her help and together it was much easier for them to cope with this. Tyra watched this from the side and asked loudly, "Is the glow getting stronger?" The magic stones couldn't withstand it and broke into many small fragments. He looked out at them warily and asked, "Did they manage to do it right?" The protagonist said that this should be enough. Natsu began to come to her senses and called out for her older brother. He was very surprised because of this, leaned over to her and asked with a worried look, "Is she okay, right? How is she feeling?" She agreed and said that she felt like she was getting better. She took off the oxygen mask and said that she was no longer in pain. He was very happy about this, immediately hugged her, and with tears of joy on his face said that he was glad about this. Tyra began to examine the fragments of magic stones and said that by directing mana into these stones located above the patient, it is possible. He did not have time to finish because Alice began to take him to the exit and said that they should discuss the details outside. They should leave them alone for now. After some time, Natsu ran down the street and listened to the news say that thanks to the new medicine developed by the Kanzaki group, the condition of severe patients affected by mana shock has improved significantly, and the mortality rate has finally begun to decline. However, mana shock continues to rage and the situation remains alarming. In order to increase the production of the new medicine, the Kanzaki group turns to ordinary adventurers with a request for cooperation, asking for the moon magic stones needed to make the medicine. MC called her, and when she answered, he wished her good morning and asked if she was okay. Natsu agreed and said that she was full of energy and had just gone for a run. By the way, where is he now? At that time, he was standing at an altitude of 8,850 meters, Mount Everest, and said that he was now on the top of the highest mountain in the world. She was surprised by this and asked if he got there so quickly. He agreed and said that he would now start descending. She admired this and asked why he decided to climb there. He decided not to tell the truth, and the system notified that the task of climbing the highest mountain in the world was completed and a reward was available for him. She said with a small smile that he was sometimes so weird. However, it was great and sounded quite fun. She also wants to climb that high on her own 2 feet one day. She was so happy that she had the opportunity to play sports again. So she decided that she would also become an adventurer like him. She will collect moon magic stones for people suffering from the same disease as her. He will support her, right? Aki agreed and said that he will help her become stronger. When he returns, they will go rock climbing together and strengthen her body. Natsu was surprised by this and asked, is he suggesting this so suddenly? Sometime later at Narita Airport, located in Japan. He was walking with a suitcase and thought that the flight was the hardest. He was very hungry. He will need to meet his sister and have lunch. His attention was attracted by the fact that in the crowd, there was a girl with a sign with his name written on it. She noticed him and asked, isn't his name Aki? He agreed and asked who she was and how did she know about the date of his arrival. She said that she was just a messenger. Her master was waiting for him. They left the airport together and he asked what would happen if he refused. She asked him not to speak and said that her master said that he wanted to warmly welcome and thank him because he found a way to cure mana shock. He looked at her and asked what she was talking about. She walked up to the car and said that her master knows everything. If he is interested, he should get in here. He noticed a plate of fruits inside and asked if he could eat it. She agreed and said that he could eat if he wanted. The protagonist got into the car. The girl drove him to an unknown location and said that they would soon arrive at the place. After that, they arrived at a luxurious building and he looked at it with a surprised expression on his face. They went inside. She called the master and said that she brought him. The man who was inside thanked her for this and said, welcome. He apologizes for such an insistent invitation. It was an S-rank adventurer, Kiraha Daigo, the leader of the S-rank guild Ice Guard. MC looked at him with a surprised expression and thought that, as expected, it was him, the leader of a powerful clan standing on the same level as the Carnelian Fury Guild. He can already feel his pressure. What does he want from him? Unexpectedly for him, Daigo ran up to him very quickly, hugged him, and started crying with loud screams. He loudly thanked him and said that he was his savior. Thanks to the medicine he found, his wife was saved. Just when he had lost hope, he suddenly appeared and saved her. He stood there with a confused look and asked if that meant his wife was also suffering from mana shock. He was glad that she was okay. He happily took out his phone, loudly agreed and said that she was completely cured and full of strength again. He gave him the phone with a photo of his wife and loudly said that he was very grateful to him. Aki was a little surprised by this and thought that unexpectedly he turned out to be quite sentimental. However, how did he know it was him? The information was supposed to be classified. He was about to say something, but Daigo suddenly grabbed his shoulders and said loudly that no matter how hard he tried to thank him, it wouldn't be enough. However, he wanted to repay the favor as much as possible. So if he agreed, then why don't he join his guild? The protagonist was surprised by this offer and said that it was a great honor, of course, but he was already in another guild. He asked, Carnelian Fury, right? He had heard of it, but they didn't have the same privileges as him. Access to an S-rank dungeon, specifically the Abyss. The path to the Abyss, which had been closed for many years, had finally opened. So how about going there with them? MC looked at the hand he extended in surprise and wondered, can he go to an S-rank dungeon? He said that normally the gates leading to the Abyss are tightly sealed and no one can get in. So even finding the entrance is a daunting task for adventurers. However, when certain conditions are met, the seal is broken and the gates open. He had heard that this is how the Abyss works. Does he mean to say that he has the key to how to get there? Daigo agreed and said that it would be more correct to say that he has the key to how to reach the top of the abyss. No matter how strong the guild he is in is, Alice can't handle this. This is the hardest dungeon that no one has ever been able to clear. Iceguard will be the first guild to do so. Aki said that he can see that he is determined. However, where does he get such confidence from? He said with a smile that they have information about an S-rank monster that lives in the abyss, a mechanical dragon. He was very surprised by this and asked loudly, where did he get such information? Daigo asked if he had heard of this monster before. He was worried about this and thought that if he found out, it might complicate the situation. He didn't show his surprise and said that he heard something about it, but he didn't remember where. He said that, however, even if it was his benefactor, he couldn't tell him more. However, if he joined his guild, he would tell him everything. The protagonist thought with a serious expression that the mechanical dragon Kurulkan was the monster that made him go back to the past. Now that he had saved Natsu, there was no point in meeting him. He also remembered Alice, who had been helping him all this time. He shook his head with a small smile and said that he was sorry, but he was not interested. Daigo was very surprised by this and said in a confused voice that this place was like El Dorado for an adventurer. There was more to it than just the mechanical dragon. It was a really difficult dungeon with the highest level of danger. It was a challenge. He promised that with him, he would definitely get to the top. He asked him to join. MC said that it was a tempting offer, but he was indebted to Alice. If he was going to go to the abyss, it would only be with her. He was a little upset by this and said that he understood him, but he was really sorry. However, if he had his own reasons, then there was nothing he could do. As part of an S-rank guild, he will inevitably be drawn into the fight for supremacy in conquering the abyss whether he wants it or not. While he was gone, the adventurer world changed greatly. A letter was brought to him, which he immediately opened and said that it concerned him too. Aki took the letter and was very surprised when he saw that it contained a plan for conquering the abyss by 5 S-rank guilds. Daigo said that this was an official quest from the association. It had just arrived recently. Carnelian Fury had probably received such a letter as well. This was a unique opportunity to infiltrate the abyss. Even the association desperately wants to get there. The high-ranking officials covet the enormous wealth hidden in the abyss. They want the treasure. The protagonist asked with a small smile, just like the adventurers, right? He laughed, agreed with him, and said that if he understood everything, then he should prepare for it. A big conflict was brewing and a lot of noise would be made. However, he must remember that his guild will always be one step ahead. He is free to do so in the way he chooses. A few days later, the 5 S-rank guild leaders gathered in one office. They were Miyata Guki, the leader of the guild Earth's Honor, Mimi Startail, the leader of the guild Startail, Furunoya Ginji, the leader of the guild Mindhunters. Also with them were Daigo and Alice. The man from the association who was sitting at the same table with them said that he was grateful to them for gathering here. The agenda is in accordance with the notice sent earlier. They are asking for their help in exploring and capturing the S-rank dungeon abyss. There is still a lot they don't know about the dungeon, and he hopes that they will work together and join forces. Ginji laughed and asked, "Did he just say work together? I wonder how many of them will actually go for it and agree to work as a team?" Mimi looked at him and said that he was such a mean old man. He said with a smile that she shouldn't be naive. They only pretend that everything is normal, but their looks say a lot. Each of them dreams of overtaking others and becoming the first. She stood up and asked what's wrong with having ambitions. Everyone wants to be the center of attention, but now it's different. The association requires them to cooperate. This old man shouldn't envy the young. Ginji smirked and said that she wasn't that young. Because of this, her smile instantly disappeared and she began to emit a powerful, sinister aura. She asked this old man, "It seems that there are many people who talk nonsense. Did he just challenge her?" He looked at her with a smirk and said that he would prefer to have a dialogue with a younger and more well-mannered girl. Alice decided to intervene in their argument, slammed her hand on the table, and loudly said that they should stop this. She said with a serious expression that they shouldn't waste time on empty talk and needed to get back to the point. Mimi was indignant at this, but she still sat back down in her seat. Ginji said with a smile that, to be honest, his mouth was dry from all this fighting. He called over a girl from the association and asked if she could get him a cup of tea. Alice sighed in displeasure as she sat down on her chair and thought that the S-rank guild leaders still couldn't find a common language, and the association chose to turn a blind eye to all of this. Besides, they were now being sent to capture the abyss. At the same time, the gate to the abyss cracked, and Kurulkan's growling head could be seen from the darkness. The association member said with a serious expression that the S-rank dungeon abyss was the first dungeon to appear in this world. The chance of returning from there was extremely low and did not depend on the adventurer's strength. Due to the high difficulty level, it was also called the final dungeon. They don't know the conditions for opening this gate, since this dungeon is extremely difficult to explore, but there is information that one of the adventurers who entered there and somehow managed to return. He also managed to see a vein of a magical mineral similar to moonstone. Daigo said with a small smile that since the usefulness of moonstone in curing magical diseases has become known, the demand for it has only increased. If this information is true, whoever manages to get to this deposit again and develop it will probably be able to live a carefree life for the rest of their lives. The association member said that it is not only about the moonstone. This place may hide resources that have such power that they can turn the modern way of life upside down. Mimi yawned, apologized for this, and said that perhaps these stories about plans for wealth seemed boring to her. Ginji chuckled and said with a smile that she does not need to pretend. She is as interested as the rest of them. She started to give off an ominous aura again, causing him to smirk and ask why she wouldn't stop this act. His smile suddenly disappeared from his face because Alice called out to that old man in a serious voice. She started to give off a powerful energy and said that if he wanted to play that badly, she would be his opponent. It didn't matter who she faced, did it? Mimi turned away with a displeased look, and Ginji raised his hands and said that he asked them not to look at him like that. The association member coughed to get their attention and said that they should continue. They were lucky now. The gate was open and a unique opportunity was presented before them. Everyone who had gathered here today will have to penetrate the deepest floors of the abyss. Guki was very surprised when he heard this and asked loudly, did he say deepest? In any dungeon, there is usually someone who controls it, the so-called boss. What will happen if they encounter the boss of this dungeon? The association member said that in order to pass the dungeon, they would have to defeat him. He was even more surprised by this and said loudly that it was dangerous. He was sure that they would not get by without losses, even on the way to the goal. What would happen if they started fighting the boss blindly? The association member said that this was why they were investing so much in them. Failure was simply unacceptable. If they were not ready for such risks, they might as well not participate. Daigo, with a calm expression, said that he did not have to worry so much. There was not a single adventurer who would not want to touch the treasures of the abyss. It seemed that everyone would agree with this. Otherwise, it would be problematic. They were all brought secret documents, and the association member said that he would share with them all the available information. They should familiarize themselves with it. Guki, with a displeased look, began to read it out loud and said that they would have to descend into the depths of the dungeon to meet the boss. Mimi asked with a haughty smile, if he was scared, then why did he come here? He said with a displeased look that she was annoying everyone present without distinction. Was she making fun of him now? She asked. He was an S rank. Then what was he scared of? Maybe he should go back to F rank. It was safer there. He got even more angry because of her provocation, broke the table with his hands and asked loudly, did she think he was weak? Mimi jumped back with a smile and said that it turned out that he already knew about it. Daigo looked at them from the side and said that this was some kind of cat and mouse game. His attention was drawn to Alice, who was standing nearby and looking out the window. He called her, and she said with a very serious look that something was approaching. At that moment, a large monster flew into the office, which surprised everyone present. Immediately attacked Guki, but he managed to react and blocked it. However, this attack was so strong that he was thrown into the wall. It was an A-rank monster, a fragment of Kurulkan. The association member looked at it with a shocked look and asked why it was outside the dungeon. Daigo was also surprised by this and asked, is this really the curse of the abyss? This is a curse that befalls those who try to pass this dungeon. They say that the abyss has consciousness and kills anyone who tries to explore it. So, the rumors were true? The association member loudly said that this is nonsense and just superstition. He was very scared because the monster turned around and looked at him. It started to attack with its paw, but Daigo managed to react and jumped aside with it. Alice turned to them and asked loudly, are they okay? He agreed, but the monster immediately decided to attack her. She was going to counterattack, but she noticed the energy that appeared around the monster and stopped. Ginji used his magic and said that those who dare to desecrate the tombs for their own gain will definitely face danger, and that is fair. However, if they decided to send this insect against them, it means they are greatly underestimated. He clenched his hand into a fist and cut off the monster's head with a thread of mana. Mimi looked at Guki and said with a smirk that he should try to learn a thing or two from this man. Unexpectedly for them, the monster with the severed head said that it was interesting. It's just a scratch. Ginji looked thoughtfully at the disappearing head of the monster and asked what he was even talking about. He saw a small stone that was left behind and held out his hand and said that it looked like a good catch. He would take it for himself. The association member refused him and said that they would handle it themselves. Daigo began to think about the monster's words and asked what he meant by that. He looked at Alice and said that she should remember a few things. He had had many encounters with him. She agreed and said that she knew his child. He asked if he should tell her. She agreed and thought that maybe this would be a good chance for them to get to know him better. Ginji smiled and put the item in his pocket and said that it seemed like they had come to an agreement and that it was time for him to go now. They shouldn't be like a mummy catching a mummy. They should all do their best. They would see each other later in the depths of the abyss. Sometime later, Aki was walking down the street looking at his phone screen and asked Alice why she needed it so urgently. He looked up and said that he seemed to be here for the first time. He saw the Carnelian Fury Guild headquarters in front of him. He walked inside and saw a guy asking a girl standing next to him if they could go to lunch together next time. He walked up to her, apologized, and asked if he could distract her for a while. He wanted to see Alice. Where was she now? They were surprised by this and wondered what kind of informal address this was. The guy asked with a displeased look what he wanted here. The protagonist calmly said that the guildmaster asked him to come, that's why he was here. The guy with a confident look said that he was probably lost, so he would give him some advice. It was customary to address the guildmaster with more respect here. He said with a calm expression that he was not lost and was a member of the guild. The guy asked with a displeased look. It seemed like he was new. Then he should remember even more that the mistress is the head of Carnelian Rage. He shouldn't be too familiar and should show her respect. He doesn't want to make enemies on the very first day, does he? He said calmly that he didn't think Alice was making such rules. Besides, he had his own way of showing respect. He got even more angry because of this and asked, wasn't he taught to respect his elders? MC said with a serious look that he talked too much. He had already lost interest in listening to him. Eru was passing by and noticed him. She called him over with a smile, and the worker asked with a worried look, does she know this person? They are about to start fighting. She should stop them. She asked with a calm look, is there really going to be a fight again? She turned to the newbie with a smile and said that he shouldn't even try, because he wouldn't be able to defeat him. He asked with a displeased look, is this what she is telling him now? She shouldn't think that she can act like this, just because she officially joined the clan. Eru turned around with a smile and said that he was just upset because he beat him to it. Usually, candidates for membership go through a long screening process. The guy became even more indignant because of this and said loudly that they both lacked tact. Disrespect for the mistress is disrespect for her entire guild. He swung his fist and said loudly that he would teach him a lesson for this. Aki managed to react to his attack and knocked him to the ground. He looked at him with a calm expression and asked, has he calmed down now? He let go of his hand and said that he didn't come here for fun, but because the guildmaster called him. The newbie was shocked by what happened and thought that this couldn't be true. How did he defeat him, an A-rank adventurer, so easily? What rank is this guy? The protagonist was a C rank, and Eru asked if he had been promoted again. He agreed, and at that moment, one of the people nearby noticed Alice coming towards them. Everyone around started greeting her happily, and she waved back. The newbie, who had just gotten into a fight, immediately bowed and greeted her. She greeted him too, and then looked at the MC and asked if something was wrong. Eru said with a smirk that he was bullying the trainee. Alice smiled and said that she thought so. Many people here support her, so she guessed that something would happen to him. They need to discuss something, so he should come with her. She wished them good luck and waved goodbye to him. Alice walked up the stairs and asked if he could behave while he was here. The others were very surprised because of what just happened. They walked down the hallway. She opened the door and said that she apologized for the wait. The guy who was already in the office said that they came just in time. He must be Aki. She told him a lot about him. He extended his hand and said that he should let him introduce himself. His name is Kogami Ren. He is an S-rank adventurer, a water mage. Alice said with a smile that he is the brains of her guild. They shook hands and he said that it was nice to meet you. He thought with a serious look that, as the lady said, he is quite strong. After that, he turned around and said that it was time for them to start the meeting. The protagonist asked, will they be here alone? Ren agreed and said that the others had already begun their action. Of course, he will have to work too. However, there are some things to discuss first. The Mindhunters plan to monopolize the abyss. She said with a smile that, as she thought, this old man is doing everything as usual. He said that they used part of the magic stone left by the echo of the mechanical dragon that attacked during the meeting. They did this to develop a new weapon and strengthen their position. MC was very surprised by this and thought, did he mention the mechanical dragon? Alice said that now I understand why they are looking for funding. Ren agreed with a thoughtful look and said that it seems like they are planning on mass production. He listened to them and wondered what happened at that meeting. It was better for him to stay on the sidelines. He asked, Carnelian Fury also has plans for the Abyss, right? Hearing a positive answer, he asked, do they want him to join them? Ren said that is not the case. They have already sent a group of S-rank people there, so he should not worry. He was a little surprised by this and thought that they are a pretty serious guild since they sent a whole group of S-rank adventurers. He handed him a tablet and said that he will be acting as part of a separate party. Alice approached him and said that it was a well-thought-out plan. She had no doubt about it. He said with a serious expression that they were facing a shrewd old man, so any means were good. Aki said with a grin that it looked interesting. He would participate. After a while, a large number of people gathered at the entrance of the dungeon, and they said that this place was usually closed. This was the first time he would see S-rank adventurers. Several people were carrying materials and loudly asked for them to make way for them. The protagonist caught a guy who tripped and asked if he was okay. He agreed and apologized. He went into the portal and the guy looked at him and asked, "This person has a C-rank bracelet, right?" He entered the dungeon and thought that he had been here often in the past. Although he had not climbed further than the first floors, he felt a familiar energy. Is Kurolkan really here? He did not have time to be distracted by thoughts now. The condition for passing the first level of the Abyss. Reach the next level within a limited time. The exact time is unknown, but it feels like he has about 10 minutes. He saw the stripes on the jackets of the adventurers who fought against the monsters and thought that this coat of arms was the Mind Hunters. The mission is secret, so he should try not to be seen. Are all these adventurers hunting for magic stones? This is the first time he sees so many people in the Abyss. MC continued to run, but a large monster stood in his way. He thought that this was bad, but now he did not have time for this. Suddenly, one of the adventurers attacked this monster with fire magic. The mage who attacked this monster asked, "Is this their ally?" Naomi agreed. He was happy when he saw her and thanked her for her help. The mage was embarrassed by this and said that in fact, it was she who saved him. She blushed and said that Alice told her everything. He should go ahead, and they will figure it out themselves. He thanked her for this and was about to run away, but he remembered something and ran back. He approached her and told her that she should be careful with the shadows. Aki thought that he did not expect that she would be in the Carnelian Fury separate unit. Considering that there is an S-rank adventurer next to her, there is no need to worry about her. He noticed that some monster was chasing him and thought that they had arrived. There's very little time left, and he can only run. He jumped over the columns lying on the floor, behind which the adventurer was hiding. He continued to run further, and the B-rank doppelganger monster was distracted by him. Aki continued running down the hallway and thought that a doppelganger was a monster that possessed an adventurer's shadow and copied their appearance. It could only copy their appearance, but once possessed, it would pursue them until they were defeated. Even if there was no need to rush, it was an extremely annoying opponent. He noticed a staircase and thought that he could see the way to the next floor. He turned the other way and thought that he needed to go here. He started to run down the stairs very quickly, but time was running out. The door was already starting to close, but he managed to jump inside at the last moment. He was breathing heavily from fatigue and thought that at least he had followed Alice's orders. In order to deceive the hunters, he had to take the treasure from the hidden room without being seen. The condition for entering the hidden room was to find a way there and get there within the allotted time. It was surprising that Ren was able to figure all of this out with such a limited amount of information. Now he needed to get to the most important thing. Even though it was a hidden room, there was only one monster living here. A-rank Abyss Guardian. The protagonist thought that his ultimate skill could not be bypassed. He used his skill and created the sword Onamaru Kunitsuna. Immediately after that, he dealt a very strong blow and broke the body of that monster. He dealt another very strong blow and hit the core and defeated that monster. He picked up the glowing item left behind by that monster and thought that the task was completed. However, even Ren did not know about this mechanism. He inserted the stone into the right place and a door opened in front of him. Many Abyss Guardians began to crawl out of the caves in the hidden room. He looked at this and thought that Alice had helped him a lot, so he would earn some more money for her. However, in return, all the experience he gained would remain his. He was very surprised because someone behind him said that this was amazing. He turned around and saw Ginji, who was sitting on the body of the defeated monster with a smile, and said that he never thought that such a hidden room existed here. His trajectory interested him, so he decided to follow him. MC looked at him and wondered how come he didn't notice he was being followed. This old man is quite dangerous. Ginji said that he seemed to know this place well. Maybe he had been here before? He said with a serious look that maybe so, but he didn't need to know. He chuckled and said that it wasn't very friendly since they were both adventurers. Why didn't he share the information? Aki was attacked from behind by an Abyss Guardian, but he managed to dodge the attack. The monster immediately looked away and ran towards Genji, who was sitting next to him. He continued to sit calmly in the same place, but the Abyss Guardian was unable to hit him because of the mana threads. The monster he took control of began to attack the protagonist, who was surprised by this. The cunning old man calmly sat in place, used his skill, and told the stubborn man with a smile that he hoped he lived long enough to talk. He immediately realized what his ability was, and asked, did he decide to threaten him? He thought that asking for help was different. Genji laughed and said that this was a very rude accusation. He accidentally got into this room with him, but he never thought that an accident would happen here. Anything can happen in life, right? Immediately after that, he directed all the monsters in this room to attack him. MC entered the battle and began to dodge all the attacks of these Guardians of the Abyss. He watched this with a smile from the side and said that he turned out to be quite agile. That's what it means to be young. One of these monsters jumped on Aki, but he immediately noticed it and cut the core with his sword. Genji noticed this and with the help of his threads began to collect this monster together. He said that if he told him everything he knew about the Abyss, then he would spare him. He refused and thought that when dealing with dolls, it is necessary to aim at the one who controls them. He ran to attack with his sword, but this old man diverted his attack in a different direction with his threads. Because of this, the protagonist could not control his weapon normally. When he finally managed to break free from this grip and attack, Genji had already managed to dodge and fly up with the help of his threads. He immediately reacted to this, used the skill Floating Sword Dance and released a wave of energy that was able to hook his shoulder. He landed on his feet and immediately grabbed his wound. MC jumped towards him, swung his sword and was about to use the skill Blazing Blade Whirlwind. Unexpectedly for him, he stopped in the air and could not even move. This old man said that this pisses him off so much, swordsman classes are extremely inconvenient for him. He used the ability Infinite Web and said that the more he moves, the more entangled in the web he will become. The outcome of this battle was decided from the start. Aki was worried about this and thought that he didn't even notice it. Genji said that out of respect for him being able to hit him, he would let him go. But he had to tell him if there were more hidden rooms or tell him about his sword. He summoned it out of nowhere. How did he get it? He refused to tell him and asked if he didn't value his life that much. He would wait until he wanted to talk. First, he would start with his fingertips. He was surprised to see a system window that said he had received a quest to crush an insolent old man. He laughed at this, which surprised Genji, and he asked why he was laughing. The protagonist looked at him with a smile and thought that he would keep quiet because he wouldn't understand anyway. Immediately after that, he began to summon many different swords, with which he was able to cut through the threads of mana. The old man was very surprised by this and asked where he got this power from. He didn't answer this question and controlled many swords with a serious expression. Genji looked at him with a worried look and thought that this was immense pressure, just like Alice. He underestimated his power. He waved his hand and controlled the monster and hit the wall to try to open the door, but he couldn't. He was surprised by what happened, and MC said that if he didn't know, this room is designed in such a way that you can't get out of here unless you defeat all the monsters. He got angry because of this and started controlling all the monsters around. He immediately used the crafting skill and created the flaming sword Durandal. He ran forward very quickly and destroyed those monsters with quick sword strikes. The old man was very surprised by what was happening and thought that he didn't expect to meet such a strong person among low-ranking adventurers. Aki ran very fast to attack him with his sword, and Genji used his threads to create a shield in front of him. He did not calculate the strength of his attack, and the sword easily pierced his shield and hit his body. Because of this attack, he died immediately and the system notified that the task was completed. The reward available to him is a magical growth stone. The main character looked at the bodies of the killed monsters behind him and said that the work is not finished yet. The host said, "Tonight is the final episode of Turn On. They are to meet the main guest of this show, a star shining brightly in the world. And this is the first star in the night sky, and it is definitely her. Mimia's star tale, and her profession is an idol." The audience exploded with thunderous applause. The camera followed the idols performing the show. After a while, the interviewer thanked Mimia for her work on the live broadcast. His partner also joined in the words of gratitude. They are grateful to her for the interview, despite her busy schedule. She replied, "You are welcome." Then the interviewer added, "Mimia is not only successfully coping with the role of an idol, but also actively working as an S-rank adventurer. She even has her own clan. How does she manage to maintain such a high level of activity?" She smiled shyly and thanked for the praise. The girl holding the microphone said with a smile that she can't believe that they are the same age. What is her secret to maintaining that youthful energy? She pressed her hands to her chest and explained that there was no secret as such, but her energy comes from the smiles and support of her fans who inspire her, and also a competitive spirit she doesn't like to lose. The interviewer was surprised. Competitive spirit? Mimiya put her hands to her cheeks and suggested, maybe it sounds arrogant, but she really doesn't like to lose. And maybe a glass of warm water in the morning helps too. The girl was surprised that it didn't sound like a joke, scary, so this is how she really is. Then they thanked her for her work and time was up. Mimiya came out of the dressing room and looking at her phone screen, said that during her interview she always looked tense. Why? Her subordinate, adjusting the huge bag on her shoulder, answered that it was because. A few moments later the idol asked in surprise, "What? Old man Furuya refused? On the first level of the abyss? Has he finally lost his mind?" Then she smirked and said that there was another topic for jokes. Then her subordinate continued and Mimiya asked in surprise, "What? He is retiring. That old man, what does he think he is doing?" Powerful pulses of energy came out of her body and flew in different directions. From such a powerful aura, a plant standing in the corridor fell to the ground. An alarmed guard ran out into the corridors and asked, "What happened?" Mimiya embarrassedly covered her mouth with her hand and, apologizing, explained that her skirt accidentally got caught. He was embarrassed and replied that he would clean everything up right away. Then they walked further. And the subordinate said that if you make noise here, someone might. But before she could say anything, Mimiya told her to cancel all plans for today, urgently. She asked in surprise, "What?" And she turned to her and repeated again that she had already told her to cancel the plans. She couldn't make her repeat herself 3 times, or she would fire her. Then she walked to the car, and the driver opened the door for her, after which she sat in the back seat and leaned her head on her hand, looking out the window. A few days ago, Mimiya was sitting tensely at the table. Furuya sat opposite her, and grinning asked, well, what would she say? She reached for her drink with a trembling hand and remarked that it was a funny proposal. Under the guise of an expedition into the abyss, eliminate Alice and take her place as the leader of the S rank. He began to eat and added, yes, they will get rid of her with their own hands. It is a cowardly way, but nothing can be done, even she cannot be defeated alone. And then Furuya noticed her trembling hands and asked, is she afraid? She put the glass back on the table and was indignant. Is he joking? Ever since that girl appeared, she had always gotten in her way. She thought irritably that she had risked her life so many times to get to the top, and she had climbed there with a light step without even breaking a sweat. The next second, the glass in her hands broke, and she said, that bastard always got around her. Then she glared at the other person and replied that she agreed. That fool would regret getting in her way. He put down his chopsticks and smiled, saying as he expected. Soon, the administration would send a request for help in exploring the abyss to all S-rank clans. That moment would be the end for that girl. Then he walked to the exit and explained that he would tell her the details later. She mustn't tell anyone. In the present, Mimiya angrily bit her fingernail and said, it was you who suggested it, that damn old man. Sometime later, the Mind Hunters, the main office. The 2 men were having fun playing a game when suddenly they heard shouts, it needs to be stopped. The next second, Mimiya walked up to them and kicked the table, sending it flying into the air. Furuya managed to catch it with his strings, and Mimiya put her hands on her waist and asked indignantly, is he resigning? She was waiting for an explanation. What's wrong with him? Where did the injuries come from? He replied that there had been an accident. In his condition, he could no longer fulfill the agreements, so he was resigning. She sent a powerful pulse of energy at him and said, it's too late. He shouldn't think he could undo everything. A magical symbol formed under her feet, and she added that he didn't need to do anything supernatural, he just needed to divert the blows. He had to take responsibility for his failures after all. Furuya grinned and said, another large figure appeared on the board. Aki, does she know someone like that? She replied that she had heard about him at the meeting. So what? He explained that he was a C-rank adventurer who knew all the secret passages of the abyss. He had easily found the hidden room, and his class was something he had never seen before. She kept looking up and did not notice the young shoots at her feet. She asked in surprise, Aki was a C-rank adventurer? Did he really lose to that scum? He closed his eyes, and she added that she was disappointed. It would be better if he continued to act like a nobody, a worthless nobody. The next second, a powerful explosion occurred in the building. Passers-by, seeing the flames, asked in surprise, what was that? Mimiya opened the back door of the car and said, we need to go. She folded her arms across her chest and thought that she should have done everything herself from the beginning. Now one S-rank spot was free, just in time. She would destroy Alice with her own hands, but before that, she called the manager and told him to collect all the information on the adventurer named Aki. Then she added that weeds need to be pulled out by the roots, right? After a while, Carnelian Fury, the main office. The protagonist looked at the building in surprise and asked what was going on. The adventurer next to him looked at the camera of his phone and replied, "Expansion. They say this is an order from Ms. Alice." The next second, the worker screamed in surprise, and the tool flew down right at the adventurer. The protagonist managed to grab him by the shirt and pull him aside while the tool smashed his phone. The adventurer's comrade leaned over to him and asked if he was okay. The protagonist walked on and waved his hand, telling them to be more careful next time. He then went to the reception desk and explained that Alice called him. The worker replied that she was waiting for him in the conference room. After a while, the MC approached the right place and, opening the door, greeted Alice and asked, did she call him? The next second, she blew up a firecracker and shouted happily. She congratulated him on being named MVP. He looked at her silently and she added, the magic stone he brought made them rich. They were finally able to carry out repairs to the outside and expand the main office. He took off his ribbons and replied that it was great. He got it for her. She could enjoy it. She shoved a cookie into his mouth and thanked him. Kogami Ren handed her a cup of tea and remarked that he was something, a rookie who was intimidating in his prospects. With these funds, they would further expand the team and improve their equipment. Alice confirmed this and added that they needed to gather more allies and become stronger, and then they would finally look into the depths of the mysterious abyss. The protagonist thought, the abyss and Kurulkan, if he could meet them again, then perhaps he would find out what happened to him back then and be able to take revenge. He then asked, is she going to continue her research? Alice handed him a drink and confirmed it. Based on the information that everyone brings, she will develop new strategies. At this point, MC took a cake and said that in that case, he also has something to offer. She replied with a smile that she would be glad to hear it. Ren thought that for a newbie who descended into the abyss for the first time, he was pretty good at navigating, as if he had raided this dungeon before. I wonder what else he is hiding. And then the protagonist said that he had already fought a mechanical dragon. Back then, he was alone and was only able to land one hit. Ren, perplexed, asked him, being a C rank, solo against a monster that is at least a B rank? Alice laughed out loud, and Ren put his hand to his head and remarked that it was hard to imagine, but it was unlikely that he was lying to them. Alice asked, an interesting person, right? The protagonist assured that everything he said was true. But it was not the kind of creature that could be found on the first floors of the abyss. This monster was much more powerful. On the status, its name was displayed as S-rank mechanical dragon, Kurulkan. Alice noticed that he was really an amazing person. Then she asked what kind of magical creature it was. He answered that as far as he knew. After a while, Alice thanked him for such valuable information. She stood near the exit and added that she now owed him a lot. He answered that she could not worry, everything was fine. She sighed and said that she felt like she did not know him at all. I will have to fix that. He should say something else next time. The protagonist walked forward and waved his hand. And then she added, oh yeah, they also have an agreement to go on a date. He stopped at these words and then walked on. He looked at the screen of his phone and noticed that he was a little late. Then he replied to his sister's message and thought it was time to go home. The next second, Mimiya appeared in front of him and said, good evening, where is he coming from at such a late hour? MC noticed that there was someone in her shadow, and then he said, her bloodlust can be cut with a knife, who is she? A magical symbol formed under her feet, and she replied, not knowing about her is the height of ignorance. Well, it doesn't matter, because today he will die. The next second, a monster Diavolo burst out of her shadow and rushed to attack the protagonist. He managed to jump back at the last moment and thought that it was a spirit summoner. Quite a rare class. Then he asked why she was hunting him, and she replied that recently she noticed that he aimed quite high, and she did not like it. She pointed her finger at him, and the next second the monster rushed to attack again. Protagonist used the craft and, taking the sword in his hands, cut off the monster's wing, and then swung the sword in front of him. But Mimiya rose into the air and asked, what's taking so long, Diavolo? This should finish him off. The next second, the monster behind the protagonist opened its mouth wide and began to concentrate energy there, sucking in everything around. The protagonist's body also flew into the monster's mouth, and he shouted, what? Then the monster absorbed him, and Mimiya said it was so easy to deal with him. He may reach for the sky, but he's still far from the stars. She jumped up and laughed loudly. Meanwhile, the protagonist was falling down and said, damn, this place. He was in Diavolo's gut, a completely isolated space. He thought, a closed space, similar to the sealing skill. Is it possible to get out of here with physical attacks? The next second, he pointed many blades forward and thought, I managed to end up in the belly of a demonic dog. This is terrible. What should I do? I need to find a way out. This place is like an endless hell. Then he noticed a glowing object in his pocket. After that, he clenched the key in his hand. Meanwhile, Mimiya, smirking, said, there is no way out of hell. Once there, he will forever fall into the void. How did an old fool manage to lose to such a good-for-nothing? A worthless fool. That was well done, Diavolo. She pulled the monster by the head and said that Alice is next. Then she looked at the belly of the monster in surprise and shouted, "What? How is that possible?" Disappeared. She angrily clenched the umbrella in her hands and shouted, "Where did it go? How dare he escape from there?" She twisted the umbrella in her hands and irritably stomped on the ground, shouted, "How the hell?" Meanwhile, the protagonist found himself in another place and looking around thought that he had succeeded. He looked at the key in his hands and thought that he could not imagine that the key to the special dungeon, received as a reward earlier, would come in handy in this way. Good thing he remembered. This is what one of the senior assassins told him about in his past life. Then the assassin asked, "Does he know how to remove the sealing skill?" The protagonist replied that he does not know. No way. The assassin raised his index finger and explained that in order to resist the seal, you need to use the seal. If this is an isolated space where he was thrown, then you can cast the seal on yourself and move to another space to escape. MC then emotionlessly threw the knife at the target, and the assassin shouted he should at least show some interest. This can come in handy at any time. In the present, the protagonist thought that he was right, although it is late, but thanks to him. Special dungeon, the so-called trial space, whose priority exceeds any normal seal. Thanks to this, he managed to get out of a dangerous situation, but before the trial is completed, it is impossible to leave here. He turned around and saw a system window that said, "Welcome to this special dungeon, the Arza's underground prison. Trial, he must defeat all enemies." A Geckozal-ranked monster appeared in front of him. The protagonist, looking at the monsters around him, said, "Everything has become even worse, it turns out." Then he turned his attention to the monster above, which spat out a toxic liquid. MC managed to jump to the side, and this liquid began to corrode the floor. He thought, "Damn, if this saliva hit him, it would hurt." Then the monster rushed to attack him, and he used Craft Thundersword. Grabbing the sword, he attacked several monsters at once, dividing it into parts. Then he saw the liquid that had accumulated on the sword and pulled his hand away and said, "Damn, that's disgusting." The next second, Geckozal grabbed his sword, lifting it into the air and then throwing it aside. The protagonist waved his hand, throwing off the clots of liquid, and said, "A ranks have pretty high intelligence for monsters, of course." He then put his hand out to the side and a sword appeared in his hands. The monster looked at it in surprise, but the next second, the protagonist cut it into two. He moved forward, attacking the monsters in his path. Geckozal stood in front of him, preparing to attack, but the protagonist threw the sword forward, piercing 3 monsters at once. He then turned around and saw several more opponents, after which he ran forward. The toxic liquid splashed onto his shirt, and he fell, crashing into the bars in his path. Falling to the ground, he breathed heavily, and then, smirking, summoned his sword and rushed to attack again. After a while, he was on all fours, leaning on the sword. His body was covered in liquid, and he said, "Damn." There was a monster left in front of him, but MC got to his feet and decapitated the enemy with sharp movements. After which he fell to the ground again and, leaning his hands on the floor, breathed heavily. A system window appeared in front of him which said that he had completed the task of defeating all enemies. A reward for completing it was available to him. He thought, "The reward is experience?" The system reported a level increase, and he thought, "Have I already risen? Not bad." And then he clenched his fist and thought, "Have the wounds and fatigue disappeared too? Lucky." The system reported that the dungeon was closing, and he said, although it was not easy, the main test is still ahead. After that, he disappeared. Meanwhile, Mimia angrily threw her umbrella on the ground and screamed, "How could he escape?" Then she bit her thumbnail and said, "Well, no matter where he goes, she will find him and kill him." The next second, the protagonist appeared behind her, and turning around, she asked in surprise, "A portal? Where is it from? What happened to it? What the hell? Why does it smell like that?" The protagonist apologized and explained that he had just gotten out of hell. She realized that he had used a skill or item to move around and seemed to have managed to level up. She then climbed onto Diavolo, and finding herself in the sky, she shouted, "Pathetic worm, he will regret not having died earlier." A huge magic symbol appeared behind her, and she shouted that it must disappear. MC put his hand forward and declared that he would come back until she got tired of it. The protagonist, looking at her, thought, "A spirit summoner. A hidden class that is unlocked by summoning 10,000 demons. Spirits have tremendous power, but remain loyal to their master. The summoner's heart determines their path, to good or evil. This is a dangerous class." Then he used the craft, the executioner's blade. Mimia, putting her hand to her face, noticed what an interesting taste it had, but she felt sorry for him. She used the summoning of spirits, and the ground under the protagonist's feet trembled. She summoned a hellworm. A huge monster burst out of the ground and captured the protagonist in its mouth, who tried to hold the monster's jaw with his hand and shouted, "Damn." The next second, the monster swallowed him, and Mimia shouted smugly, but alas, only he will be executed here. The next second, the protagonist's blade burst out of the monster's body, and she looked at it in surprise. The protagonist got out of the body and, holding the hole on the sides, said, "I'm all dirty again." Mimia wondered, puzzled, how could he break through the worm's hard shell? She snorted and concentrated the energy in her hands, shouting that he belongs in the dirt. Then she sent an energy pulse at the protagonist, and he thought, a magic charge. He wanted to jump aside, but the wound on the monster's body began to heal, absorbing his leg. The magic projectile continued to fly at him. And the next second there was an explosion. The family watching what was happening said in surprise, "What is this?" "This is a fight between adventurers." Meanwhile, the worm fell to the ground, and Mimia said, "Well done, Magoto." The protagonist got to his feet, and she asked in surprise, "What? Can he move?" The next second, several more spirits emerged from the magical symbols behind her, and she said that he must surrender. These spirits are willing to die for her. Then she raised her hand and shouted, "Attention! The spirits see that bug. She wants it to tear him apart. It must bring her his head." The next second, the spirits rushed to attack. The MC, holding the sword in his hand, looked at it in horror. The boy, pointing his finger at the sky, said harshly, "Isn't this woman Mimia? These spirits are like monsters, scary." Mimia, meanwhile, sitting on the monster, happily declared that only she can shine on the stage. She will not allow anyone to steal her light. She thinks this is enough? Her dear spirits, they must show her his head. But the next second, the protagonist raised the sword with the spirit's head hanging on it, and she looked at it in surprise. The protagonist asked who called the ghost hunter. He took out his sword and explained that the more blood this sword drinks, the sharper and stronger it becomes. Mimia, clutching her head with her hands, screamed in fear. Her spirits! How dare he? He replied that he did not care about her stage, but for attempting to take his life, she would face the consequences. She told him to shut up and keep his stupid threats to himself. She created a magical symbol above herself and declared that she would kill anyone who dared to stand in her way. No rabble would dare reach her heaven. They must all worship her, and only her. She used the summoning of the spirit, Artorias, the Star Knight. The next second, the spirit charged. The protagonist thought, as long as he had Natsu, he would not lose. Then he swung his sword and easily decapitated the knight, grazing the adventurer's chest. She stretched out her hand and said that this could not be. She could not lose. She flew down while memories of children saying that they would not be friends with her because she was a suck-up popped into her head, and she thought that everyone abandoned her. But she was not alone. She always had spirits with her. The next second, she fell on Diavolo. Bleeding, she looked to the side and asked, what was she missing? Diavolo? Then her eyes closed, and the family from the next door continued to watch. The protagonist sighed and said that fighting harangues was quite difficult. She asked for it, but maybe he overdid it? Damn, what a long night. A few years ago, the referee announced the start of the battle. The opponent, looking at Alice, thought that she would be easy to defeat. Then she walked forward, preparing to attack. But Alice threw her into the air with one blow, and the referee declared the end of the fight. And the winner was Alice. She loved to pump up her body. Before she had time to look back, she was already able to challenge people who were much older than her. She couldn't help but be flattered. But then, she could not imagine that she would have to take control of her father. Then, she got out of the car and was happy to see her dad. Running up to him, she waved her hand and shouted, "Here she is." The next second, a portal opened behind her father, and the monster decapitated him. The thing is, her father was killed by a monster with one blow. At first, she thought she was doing it for revenge, because at that moment she couldn't do anything, but now she has many friends. She loved her job, and it became her new reality. She was standing in front of the portal, and at that moment, an adventurer came up to her and said that all the preparations were complete, they could go in. She said that it was great and thanked her. Then she looked at the protagonist and asked what was wrong with him. Now, he looks more manly. He touched the bandage on his face and answered, "Well, nothing serious." Then the adventurer, apologizing, asked, "But is she sure it's a good idea to take him along?" "He's a C rank." Alice replied that she shouldn't worry, he's stronger than he looks. Only he can keep track of her sword. The next second, she swung her weapon, and MC managed to dodge at the last moment. The adventurer held her hat against the rising air and said that she could not see anything. Alice, smiling, assured that she knew what she was talking about. The protagonist thought that even though he could see the sword move, her speed still gave him goosebumps. And then Alice said that it was time to go in, to gather everyone. The protagonist clenched his fist and thought that he could not believe that he would be able to fight shoulder to shoulder with an S-rank clan. He had never dared to dream of such a thing before. Now that he thought about it, he remembered the future. 20 years later, the leader of the Carnelian Fury, Alice, died while conquering the abyss. The entire clan disappeared with her. Of course, that was still a long way off. But should she go? Alice turned to the adventurer and asked if there was something on her face. She replied that there was not. After a while, they entered the abyss. Several monsters flew out to meet them, but Alice easily decapitated them. MC thought that they had passed the first floor without any problems. After the second, they would easily reach the middle level. A perfect route, no unnecessary movements as expected from the clan. Meanwhile, Alice, turning to the tired adventurers, said that they had worked hard. They would not be in such a hurry from now on, they could rest a little. The next second, she turned her gaze to the side, and the adventurer asked, "Is something wrong?" She waved her hand and shouted, "Everyone back!" A monster of rank S, an Abyss Knight, jumped down from above towards them. The adventurers wondered what the boss was doing on the lower level. Alice explained that it was a dungeon boss class monster. The adventurers added that the question remained the same. What was it doing here? She explained that they were in the abyss. Strange things often happen here. She rather expected something like this. With that, she took out her sword and charged at the knight. One of the clan members shouted, "The lady was able to parry the boss's attack. Unbelievable." She continued the fight, attacking the knight. At that moment, the protagonist joined her and also parried with his sword. The knight flew to the side, and Alice looked at the protagonist and, thanking him, added that she was completely fine. His help was not needed. He said, quite the opposite. As a leader, she should conserve her strength. Then they ran to the attack and shouted that they will deal with this themselves. The protagonist pointed his sword at the knight, but the boss blocked his attack. Alice also made her attack. They advanced forward, pushing the boss back. The adventurers, perplexed, shouted, "What's going on? Isn't he a C rank? Why is he fighting on par with an S rank monster and the mistress? Did he lie about his rank?" Alice shouted with a smile at this moment, "He's not bad, Aki, but he doesn't think it's unfair. He should let her deal with the boss herself." He blocked the knight's attack and said, "No way." He thought, a monster with this level and power, that's what the abyss means. And then they continued the fight. They attacked the knight again. The boss flew back, destroying the ground beneath him. Then it got to its feet, its eyes lit up, and it grabbed its sword again. MC shouted at Alice to be on guard. Something is coming. Then he was surprised. Is that creating fog? Alice turned to her clan members and told them to stay away. The knight waved his arms, spreading the smoke further. The adventurers called out to Alice in alarm, and the next second she was behind the boss. She swung her weapon, but the knight blocked her attack, and she flew back, stopping on the ground. The protagonist thought he couldn't even follow her movements. That's the strength of an S-rank adventurer, Alice. She held her sword out in front of her and said it was her time to shine. The knight took a stance in front of her, and she said the same trick wouldn't work on her twice. The smoke continued to spread, and the next second she was surrounded by several copies of the knight. The protagonist ran towards her and thought, "Damn." He stopped near the spears and, having parried the blow, shouted, "Damn." The copies of the knight surrounded Alice, and the protagonist thought, "No, she won't die here, right, Alice?" The next second she turned around and decapitated all the enemies around her with one swing. Then her sword got caught on the knight's helmet. She tried to push the weapon further, but the boss grabbed her sword with his hands. She closed her eyes, and then with renewed strength she cut through the knight's neck. The adventurers looked on in surprise as the boss knelt down and said, "Princess." He failed to protect her again. A powerful pulse of energy spread out from his body in all directions. The adventurers began to cover themselves with their hands, and Alice said, "A disaster, an abyssal disaster is about to begin." MC thought in surprise, "What?" And she asked if they could report it. Her clan member answered in the affirmative, and she asked if anyone was hurt. If so, then they should pack up and go. The protagonist approached her and asked what an abyssal disaster was. She answered, as she thought, he didn't know either. This phenomenon was discovered only recently. Then she looked at the missing knight in surprise and said, "Okay, they need to go. She will tell them everything along the way." At this moment, a dark elf was watching them from the shadows. The adventurers climbed the stairs, and Alice said, "They say that many monsters from the abyss are the souls of deceased creatures from another world." The protagonist was surprised. "What? Is that possible?" She said that she herself is not entirely sure whether it is true or not. One thing they do know is that souls that experience extremely strong feelings are intertwined with the magic of the abyss and are reborn as powerful monsters that then attack people. If one of them is defeated, these feelings burst out and spread throughout the dungeon, which provokes the monsters to violence. This phenomenon is called the calamity of the abyss or the curse of the abyss. They say that this may be the cause of the overflow phenomenon. The protagonist thought, overflow, if you think about it, it seems that in the first timeline he already encountered the calamity of the abyss. He was attacked by a monster, after which he beheaded the monster, who was screaming. Where? He thought that at that time he was surprised that the monster could talk. Then he asked if there could be some connection. Alice answered that there are many other examples that confirm this theory. He looked at her and noticed that she didn't look well. She replied that she was fine, and he said that she needed to rest for a while. She said that she could still walk, but the next second she collapsed on the floor. He managed to catch her and shouted, "What was wrong with her?" He turned around and shouted in confusion, "Why the hell did everyone fall unconscious at once?" At that moment, the princess appeared in front of him and explained that the disaster of the abyss is not something that can be seen. She waved her hand, filling the space with her energy, and the protagonist thought that this was the first time he had met such a monster. She put her hand to her face and said that she didn't think he had time for discussion. These people would soon die and become food for the abyss. He shouted in confusion, "What?" She spread her arms out to the sides and added that if he wanted to survive, he should leave the abyss now. She thought that he would be able to carry at least this woman out of here. He thought, so it was because of her. Damn, if she's telling the truth, he won't be able to take them all out. But then the rest of the clan will die. What should we do? Next second, an ice shard flew past the princess. She put her hand forward, stopping it. Then she said, "Another daredevil who isn't afraid of disaster?" Kiraha Daigo came out to them and said that he had already warned her. Alice wasn't able to challenge the abyss. MC turned to him in surprise, and the dark elf pulled the crystals to herself and, licking her lips, said, "Dense high-frequency magic. What a beauty." He replied that he was pleased to hear praise from her, a dark elf. The protagonist was surprised. "A dark elf?" He replied, "A magical life form that lives on the middle floors of the abyss. Excellent magicians, and their specialty is mental magic. No matter how strong he is, without stability, he won't pass by her." The princess asked, "Did he have a plan, young man?" But it seemed like he could have handled her just fine without it. He smiled and replied that it was true. After all, he was perfect. She tossed a strand of her hair and said, okay, she would let him pass. But he shouldn't be so frivolous. Otherwise, before he knew it, the flames of disaster would burn him to ashes. He nodded and then, turning to the protagonist, apologized and said that they would move on. After all, his people couldn't maintain stability forever, and he advised him to leave this place with Alice. The ice guard would deal with the abyss. The protagonist thought that it was true. It would be better to take Alice and leave now. However, if the Carnelian clan left empty-handed, their position among the S-rank clans would decrease, and it was unlikely that they would be able to challenge the abyss again. Then he stood up and, holding his sword in front of him, declared that he would not leave. He just needed to defeat her to move forward, right? He thought that this way he would repay her for everything. The princess asked, "Is this his final decision? How cocky. I wonder how long he will last." And then she snapped her fingers, and several more elves appeared behind her. MC thought in surprise, "More elves?" The princess concentrated energy above herself and said, "In the darkness of the abyss, they are the best at navigating. Psi charge!" She sent several powerful impulses straight at the protagonist, and he ran forward, trying to reflect the attacks. But the next second, one of the elves jumped on him and wanted to hit him with a fist, but the protagonist managed to hold his sword in front of himself, blocking the attack. Then he swung his sword, throwing the elf back. He thought, what happened to their skin? It's so hard. And then the elves used the Dance of the Dead. Resonance. The next second, corpse hands started to appear from the stairs, trying to grab the protagonist. Another elf waved his hand, releasing a pulse of energy. The protagonist thought, damn, the attacks hit him, and the other elf grabbed his head and, lifting him into the air, slammed him against the wall. The princess was surprised. Is he really that weak? But then she saw the elf's body pierced by the protagonist's sword. Blood was running down his face, and he thought that he could not see anything. She asked, how did he like that? Abyss. This should demonstrate its power. Light scattered across the space, and the protagonist thought, this. His memories seemed to start burning. It was the ability of the calamity of the abyss, oblivion. He grabbed his head and shouted, no! He fell to his knees, and the princess shouted, yes, that's it. That expression suits him. What is it? Has he lost precious memories? The next second, several blades pierced the heads of the elves, and she shouted in surprise. What? The protagonist created several blades around himself, and then sent it forward again. The princess dodged to the side and pointing her hand forward shouted, Shadow of Reason. Several magical pulses rushed straight at the protagonist, and he realized that he could not dodge. He created a huge sword in front of him. But the clots of energy passed through it. The princess laughed loudly and shouted, no way! He will not escape from her. MC put his hand out and looked in horror at the energy pulses approaching him, and then pushed off the ground and, swinging his sword, ran to attack, but almost reaching the target, he fell to the floor. The princess noticed that he surprised her, a human, but now his mind is in her power. Then she laughed, and the protagonist thought that his head was splitting. Where was he even? Opening his eyes, he saw his legs and the blade in his hands. He thought, did he really have this dagger? And then he heard a scream. He should open his eyes. Stop sleeping. Then he hit the stairs and turned around to see adventurers, one of whom leaned over and smirked at him. What a useless assassin. He looked at them in surprise, and the mage said, despite being S rank, he was useless. The knight noticed that the assassin profession was last century. The protagonist wondered why they were here. No, that's right, he was exposed because he was the weakest assassin. A monster jumped on him from the stairs, and he used a skill, Shadow Step. The next second, he disappeared, and then appeared behind the monster and attacked it in the back. He thought that the armor was too strong. Then the monster turned around and hit the protagonist, causing him to fly back. Clutching his head, he thought, damn. A knight approached him and asked, but why is he climbing? The mage asked, what is the point of his heroism? Is he just bait? Why is he trying so hard? Did he seriously want to kill the monster with this pathetic thing in a toothpick? Laughable, really stupid. The protagonist crouched on the ground and thought, really, why? He felt that he could kill it, but he did not have strong skills or high stats, since his profession was the weakest. And then he looked at the image of his sister in his necklace and thought that he had not been able to help her. He remembered how he told her that maybe she would get better soon. Then he put his hand to his head and thought, no, stop. What is this? This is strange. He does not remember saying such a thing. At this moment, the knight, turning to him, shouted, idiot, is he even going to get up? He replied that he was already on his way. Then, they continued on their way up the stairs, and the knight said that the abyss turned out to be a fairly simple dungeon. The fighter threw his hands behind his head and, agreeing with him, added, complete relaxation. It had been a long time since he had descended so easily into the depths of the dungeon. The magician said that they had been warned about some kind of disaster. The knight waved his hand and told her to forget it. Nothing would happen. The next second, the magician looked at the hole in the wall and asked, what is this? Walking inside, the fighter asked, a bunch of coffins? She added that she did not like it here. The knight went deeper into the room and said that there could be something valuable here. He suggested looking around. Then they went to the middle floors of the abyss, the Temple of Darkness. The magician asked, have they heard anything about such a place? The fighters spread their arms to the sides and answered negatively. The knight assumed that this was a new area. They needed to be more careful. Then they noticed a coffin that was larger than the others. The magician, putting her hand on the coffin, turned to the protagonist and told him to open it. And then he pulled back the lid of the coffin, and she snorted, a typical stinky mummy. Then she noticed the crystal in the mummy's hands and asked what was that. She took it in her hand and said it was the first time she saw something like that, a magic stone. An appraisal. She asked, a stone, a task? The knight asked, valuable? The fighter asked, what can it do? She said, tests for those destined to become guardians of the dungeon. Something like that. They were surprised, and what does that mean? She answered, who knows? That's all that is known about it. The protagonist thought, this stone, it feels like he knows what it is, but where did it come from? Then the stone fell right at his feet and the knight told him to take it. This is his reward. He should at least get something for his work, right? The mage, laughing, added, my god, this is like throwing a bone to a hungry dog. The protagonist knelt down and then picked up the stone, and a system window appeared in front of him, saying that he must use assassin skills and kill the floor boss. Hidden conditions present. The knight asked in surprise, why was he looking at him like that? He replied, nothing, and then thought in surprise, was he the only one who saw this? Kill the floor boss. Why him? He can't handle even a regular monster. No, as if he was hearing this condition for the first time, this is very strange. Why does it all seem familiar to him? And the fighter asked that there should be a guardian behind this door, which was mentioned in the stone. The mage replied, no idea. The knight concluded that they needed to go in first. The fighter took a stance and said that he would arrange it now. The protagonist walked up to him and told him to wait. He turned around and asked what he want. He should get out of the way, assassin. MC held out the stone forward and thought, this is not just a stone. The next second, the doors opened and the knight, walking forward, asked, so that was the key? He's a good boy, Aki. The fighter said, well, at least he did something useful. They went inside and the knight said in surprise, wow, there must definitely be treasure here. The next second, the boss in front of them said, the keeper has been found. If they value their lives, they must leave. The protagonist thought he remembered this armor. The mage was indignant. What an upstart. So this is the boss's room. The knight offered to defeat this and get a reward. He stood up and shouted, dealing with the dead man will be easy. The next second, the fighter's hands separated from his body, and he screamed in pain. The boss said, first. The mage screamed in fear. No. The boss walked towards her, and then pierced her body and said, second. The adventurer looked in horror at the approaching boss, and then held his sword in front of him, blocking his attack. But he moved his sword again, trying to block the enemy's weapon. But the next second, his sword flew out of his hands and he fell to the ground. He put his hands in front of him, breathing heavily. His hands were shaking with fear, and tears were gathering in the corners of his eyes. He looked at the protagonist, and MC thought that the boss was too strong. This was unrealistic. He couldn't do anything. The next second, the necklace fell off his neck and fell to the ground, revealing a photo of his sister. Memories came to his mind. Natsu put his hand to her cheek and said, "Brother, it doesn't hurt anymore." He was horrified by these memories, and the boss, approaching the knight, swung his sword and said, "And the third, their lives will be an offering for his princess." The next second, the protagonist ran forward and pierced the boss's hand with a dagger. The knight, perplexed, shouted, "Aki?" He thought Natsu was waiting for him. He said he wasn't the weakest, so he could beat it. MC kicked him, and then turned to the side and asked if he was okay. The knight replied yes, and anyway, it was not for him to worry about him. He turned around and screamed in fear. Aki looked around and saw a warrior and a mage lying on the ground. The system window reported that he had confirmed his participation in the quest. Temporary release of skills, fusion of shadows. MC wondered, the skill of manipulating the shadows of others? He had never used this assassin skill before. He sighed and said that it was getting more and more interesting. Aki activated his ability and directed his teammates forward, after which the boss swung his sword, but the shadows evaporated. MC thought that this was where he miscalculated. You can't let the assassin out of your sight. He walked around the boss and swung his sword, then struck and landed with a somersault. Aki thought that it was too weak a blow. He lacks determination. Suddenly the boss got very close to him and he jumped back and started blocking the blows. MC thought, "He's coming." The knight screamed. No matter how strong the assassin was, he couldn't defeat the boss alone. It's impossible. MC stumbled and thought, "Nightmare." The boss swung and cut MC's body, which quickly dissolved. He turned around and looked in surprise at Aki, who moved behind him. The knight screamed. He put a shadow in his place and moved behind him. MC smiled and thought that fusion of bodies is quite a useful skill. He can't be defeated by force alone, and he understands this better than anyone. MC screamed, "Cloning." Everyone got their own shadow, and Aki thought that the weak have their own ways of fighting. The boss looked at this in surprise, and then swung his sword and cut off the head of the warrior, who again turned out to be a shadow. The warrior rushed forward, when suddenly a mage and a warrior appeared from different sides, which misled the boss. MC thought that if it is impossible to penetrate the armor, then the best solution would be to hit the head. Suddenly the boss's eyes flashed, and he screamed loudly, spreading his mana everywhere. MC screamed and thought that he couldn't move. The boss began to quickly swing his sword, cutting the bodies of the shadows. After a while, all the bodies of the shadows that were lying on the ground evaporated, and the boss looked at this in surprise. The knight screamed in fear. All the shadows. What will happen now? Suddenly Aki appeared from the liquid, swinging his sword. The boss felt him and quickly turned around, but did not have time to do anything, because MC had already pierced his throat. The boss caught his breath, and said that it was not bad. Maybe they will meet again, but under different circumstances. His body disappeared, and Aki fell to the ground and began to breathe quickly from fatigue. Suddenly the knight came out from behind the column and asked how. Why didn't he run away? MC smiled and answered that he was no longer the same as he was before. Someone is waiting for him, so he can't run away anymore. The knight looked at him and said, "Kiyomi, he always envied his talent." At that moment, MC's body was covered in mana, and he teleported to the stairs, where the Princess of the Abyss put her heel on his head. She laughed and said, "This is what happens to stubborn children. He and his comrades will become food for the Abyss." She swung her blade, when suddenly Aki jumped up and cut off her head. The princess's body began to evaporate, and she asked how. MC smiled, and replied that thanks to her, he would be able to let go of his past and not cling to it anymore. He thought, shadow fusion, it seems like he can use this skill even after awakening. Is it because of that item? He walked up to Alice and asked her to wake up. He screamed, "Alice!" She was in a deep sleep at that moment, imagining that she was sleeping on a spacious flower meadow. Alice saw a puppy in front of her and asked, who else was he? The puppy came up to her and began to lick her cheeks, which touched Alice very much. Suddenly, a huge eagle flew onto the lawn and wanted to take away the crystal, because of which the puppy grabbed the bird. The eagle flew away, and Alice screamed joyfully, "Unbelievable. He's special too, right?" She hugged the puppy and offered to go with her. Suddenly she saw her father, who waved his hand and screamed, "Alice, they have to go." She screamed joyfully, "Dad." The father asked, "Alice, is that a dog?" After a while the assistant asked, "What should they do?" They do not know where the dog came from. The father replied that if Alice likes it, then let her stay. Perhaps this will help fill Alice's loneliness after the loss of her mother. He entered the house and said to first study this creature. This is clearly an unusual dog, the assistant answered. He listens. The father picked up the frame with the photo and remembered the loud cry in the hospital. They are having a girl. Quickly, they need a transfusion. The father asked to hold on, and his wife held his hand and asked to name little Demoness Alice. Let her be happy always. The father held the frame in his hands and said that everything was fine with Alice. She was their very strong girl. She got good grades and fought and supported animals. Several more years passed before the dungeons appeared in their world. At that time, there were no adventurers or monsters yet. How nostalgic. Suddenly, Alice moved to the shore of the lake and thought, What is she doing? She looked around and saw a duck lying motionless in the water. The hunter took out the duck and told Alice to look how huge he had shot. Shiro barked loudly, rushing towards him, and Alice ordered him to stop. The hunter ruffled his hair and said, It seems he doesn't like him. The hunter looked at her and said that he knew what she was thinking. After all, their fate was decided for them. But he was sure that he could make her happy. Suddenly, he cried out, Let her look. A deer was hiding in the bushes. He handed Alice a gun and told her to try to hit it. Alice frowned and fired, missing the deer. The hunter laughed and said that not everyone succeeds on the first try. Shiro rushed after the animal into the bushes, and after a while dragged the body of a huge bear. The hunter screamed in fear. What? Alice ran up to Shiro and hugged him, said that only he and Dad knew what she was thinking. Shiro, Dad, she loves them more than anyone in the world. Alice remembered how her father met her and she ran to him. Suddenly a red glow appeared, and after a while her father's body was torn to pieces, and the huge Shiro washed away the bodies of passers-by. Alice stood covered in blood and cried. Shiro, no. People demanded to put this dog to sleep. He saw it all himself. The crystal in the dog's belly attracted this monster. Because of it, the president. Alice was sitting on a chair and heard all these words, and then she got up and went to the street where Shiro was lying tied up. She squeezed the blade and swung it and said, No, she doesn't hate him, but it's necessary. Let him forgive. After a while, she was sitting by the tombstone and crying, asking for forgiveness. She screamed, Let him forgive, let him forgive. Suddenly the tombstone exploded and a huge energy flow. All the loved ones who died appeared in front of Alice and said that it was all her fault. Alice held the blade in her hands and thought, it was her fault. She pressed the tip of the blade to her throat and thought, if she doesn't end this now, who knows how many more people will die. She heard a voice, Alice. The voice asked her to wake up, but she didn't understand who it was. Finally, at the present time, she woke up, opening her eyes abruptly. MC held her head and said, Alice, thank God, she woke up. Alice asked, kill me? Aki thought that if she had gone a little longer, her soul would have fallen apart. He asked, how is she? Alice answered that she was fine, but she had a terrible dream. MC agreed with her and asked, this is a terrible place, isn't it? But the main thing is that she is okay. Alice smiled and said, only he seems to be too stubborn to stay next to her. MC looked at her puzzled, and she said that they don't have much time. Is he ready to go further? Aki answered, of course, he is the strongest here. Alice said, then forward, into the depths of the abyss. After a while, the squad was climbing the stairs and someone was speaking. Finally, they all woke up. The guy fixed his hair and said, he already thought that he would die here. Alice said that first they need to catch up with one upstart. The unknown dungeon will be conquered by them. Suddenly, they saw a light and went outside, which surprised them greatly. MC said, this is it. Alice interrupted him and screamed, this is the deepest part of the abyss, right? And where are the others? Did they really split up? Aki said, there is dense mana in the air. Alice grabbed her face and asked, does that mean they ended up in a magical space? Here it is. MC pointed his finger towards the castle and said that the castle is where the most mana comes from. They need to go there. Maybe they will meet the guys on the way. Alice said upset that they have no choice anyway. After a while, they were walking down the street and looking at each other. Alice said something, but she did not expect to see a city in the dungeon. Aki wondered, maybe this is another race that lives here on par with the Dark Elves? Suddenly a girl ran between them, and then fell. The knight rushed forward and shouted loudly, Princess. Alice frowned and said, this knight, they fought with him on the middle floor. MC replied, yep, he thought that he saw it in his dream. It seems that he is closely connected with this dungeon. Suddenly he turned around and saw that the knight swung his spear. Aki rushed forward and ordered to watch out, but his hand passed through the princess, and her body was injured by the spear. Someone screamed that the mechanical guards were out of control. The knight fell to his knees and screamed, Princess, why, shouldn't they be protecting the city? MC thought that he can't even touch her. Alice screamed, Kiyomi, is this reality or a projection of the past? Aki replied that he didn't know, but they definitely won't be able to interfere with what is happening. Suddenly, a spear hit the knight as well, and he raised his head and said, Princess. The mechanical knight ran up to Alice and swung his spear, and she thought that if this is still a projection of the past, they won't be able to harm them. MC screamed. Alice, be careful, they're real. She turned around in fear and then jumped to the side. She stood up and thanked Aki for what he said. She didn't even notice. MC said that among the illusions there are also real mechanical soldiers. He asked her to rely on him. He can recognize them perfectly. Alice smiled and said, yes, he is mysterious, like the abyss itself. The system window reported that the task had been updated. We need to suppress the uprising of mechanical soldiers. MC reached out to the sword that appeared and said that it was high time to use this. He rushed towards the knights and began to dodge spears, and then began to strike. He dealt with several knights, and Alice screamed, how fast? How does he even tell them apart? Suddenly, frightened people rushed at her, who did not even notice her presence and knocked her down. She screamed loudly, horror, let them let her through. Aki answered, the real ones just have shadows. MC chopped up the body of another knight, and then thought that in his first life as an assassin, in order to hone the shadow step, he began to pay attention to such things. The remaining knights were covered in dark mana, after which they changed their forms. Alice asked in surprise, did they change their forms? MC swung his sword and thought, it seems that this is somehow related to Kurulkan. One of the knights began to glow, and then blew up, approaching Aki. Alice screamed in fear, Kiyomi. His body was lying on the ground, when suddenly MC screamed, no need to worry. The real one is here. He moved behind the knight, using shadow fusion. Aki asked the knight, it seems, is he their commander? He used craft, after which swords burst out of the portal and slammed into the knight's back. His body blew up, and MC apologized to Alice for not letting her participate in the fight. Alice fixed her hair and replied, well, what can I say, but she was lucky to be here with him. The system window reported that the task was completed, and the reward was a magic escape stone. Aki thought about it, and again something rare. After a while they climbed a cliff which overlooked the burning city. Alice extended her hand and said that she did not even feel the heat from the fire. It was all sad. The city was beautiful. It was a pity that they could not do anything.